Hey, be sure to like and subscribe to everything you see here on A2D Radio. Let's go! Wait a second. I'm not Steve. What am I doing here?
Let's go! This ain't the fuck night, or this game can heat stink!
Oh shit!
It's gone!
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the weekly roundup here on A2D Radio. I'm Frank Vespi. You've probably seen me on a show that happens every Wednesday night. And joining me is Zach and Dan. Guys, welcome to another interesting Saturday show.
What's going on, man?
Frank Vespi, thank you for being here. Letting you know, a lot of stuff going on, right? Steven has some issues going on with everything with him in his personal life. So, we got it, as usual, family here at A2D, and family has each other's back. So, we're gonna make it happen tonight, and it's gonna kick ass like usual, right? And that's what we do here. The A2D family, Frank Vespi stepping in to help us make sure everything goes off without a hitch, and best in the business here at A2D Radio. And if you're looking for the best in the business when it comes to real estate, looking to buy or sell a home, looking for a change of career or brokerage, you contact Alan Foy of eXp Realty LLC at 302-682-8820 or visit him at alan.foy@exprealty.com. Frank, Daniel,
Yes.
A lot of stuff going on in sports. Tom Brady announcing his retirement earlier today. We got that. We've got the NFL playoffs tomorrow. We've got Joel Embiid playing at, an MVP level, and you're kind of like, outside of that, what do we have? We're going to talk about how he needs maybe a little bit more of a helping cause, and I want to kind of to have a little bit of a conversation if it reminds you guys a little bit of Allen Iverson having to kind of carry a team on his back without really having much help. That'll be a fun conversation, but of course, the Hall of Fame voting for Major League Baseball. That was this weekend, or excuse me, this week, leading into this weekend. And, we all had an idea that Barry Bonds and Clemens and guys like that weren't going to get in. But it's weird. It becomes really weird, and even more weird now that a guy in David Ortiz, who I love, personally, I think, I have no problem with being a first ballot Hall of Famer. But obviously a guy that is connected to steroids just as much as, any of these other guys, and he gets in on the first ballot, yet somehow they're still keeping Bonds and Clemens and all these other guys out. And I don't know. I'm just at a point where I'm so tired of all of it. Let everybody in. Guys, it's a museum at the end of the day, is it not? I mean, it's it's the Hall of Fame, but at the end of the day, it's a museum that's trying to tell the story of professional baseball. And it just seems absolutely ridiculous at this point that we're still trying to, I don't know, and not us, I guess the baseball writers are trying to be petty and make a point and make a statement, by trying to stick at the guys that they felt, I guess, in their opinion, tarnished the game. I want you guys' opinion on it in 1 second, but my thought on it is, I want them all in, and I don't care if there has to be something on a plaque that says, hey, this guy and his connection to steroids, or if Pete Rose's case, this guy and his connection to gambling or whatever. If you want to do that to make yourself feel better and it makes them, everybody that has a problem with it sleep better at night, go for it. But it's just, this is a silly conversation as far as who deserves to be in and who doesn't. We know there's already steroid users in the Hall of Fame. I'm so sick and tired of this idea of who gets to be in and who doesn't. Let them all in, and let's let the Hall of Fame be what it was designed to be, which is also a museum that's telling the history of baseball. Daniel, your thoughts on it?
This is a tough subject here because of the fact that, of course, it involves steroids and all the stuff that helps a baseball player play better. I think it's either you should either everybody get in or none of them get in because, of course, you brought it up. David Ortiz was linked to steroids, but there's never really been any like he's done this or done that, or we've tested him again and he's good. And at the point in time when he got tested was right before he went to Boston. It was when he was with Minnesota. So it's kind of a situation where it's like his whole time in Boston was kind of like the pinpoint of his career where he blossomed and became a all-star DH and was beloved by the fans. And he never tested positive once there. So was it just like he said that it must have been like an over-the-counter like pill or something that probably triggered the test, or was it something else? I think they need to be more in tune and more like the MLB needs to give us more information about the matter so we can kind of relate to it and kind of understand everything. Whereas guys like Bonds and Clemens weren't the best with coming clean with what they were doing. They kind of denied it a lot. They're like, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And then it came out, and then years later, they're like, oh, yeah, I used it, blah, blah, blah. But then at the same time, they weren't great with the writers and with the reporters. The reporters hated dealing with them. I think that had something to do with them not making it because they were kind of difficult to talk to. And that's why Big Papi is very well liked. Everybody likes him. He's easy to talk to. You could say they kind of brushed it under the rug a little bit, but at the same time, it's like there's no clear-cut thing that was like, he used it, here's proof. It's just this thing that said his name's on a list, and from there on out, they didn't go further into the list. They were just like, he's on a list, and it's like they forgot about the list afterwards.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And for those who are watching right now, the poll question is: the MLB should alter the Hall of Fame election process if you agree or disagree. And with my thoughts on it, there's a huge part of me says that they should stay out of the Hall of Fame, but also it's like, well, those guys like your Barry Bonds, the Roger Clemens, the Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro, they all had a key part in, bringing baseball back after the strike. And that's a very valid argument when, those home run hitters saved the game of baseball. You take a look at the home run chase from McGwire and Sosa back in '98. And that's a probably a great season of baseball right there. But, to these writers and reporters, the steroid era, the Mitchell report, the stuff about Balco, that's still fresh in their minds years after their careers these players' careers have ended. And of course, we could say about like, yeah, these players were great, but hey, there's some flaws. And not all of us are perfect. Not every single baseball player is perfect. There have been, as Zach said, roid users in the Hall of Fame. There are guys who have done lots of worse things that are in the Hall of Fame. So, should they be in the Hall of Fame? Yes. But I think they will get in the Hall of Fame, either by committee or, yeah, that's pretty much it at this point. It's by the committees,
Yeah, they've got a Veterans Committee sort of thing. By the way, it took 6 minutes. 6 minutes for my internet to do its weekly fuck everybody and bonk the fuck out. And yeah, so I'm glad that I, didn't wait, I was like, oh, yeah, let me get my point in there real quick before my internet fucks everybody over, and then throw it to Daniel and to Frank. But I don't know. For me, it's so funny because like we've got stories. First of all, Babe Ruth. There's been stories of Babe Ruth like injecting himself with sheep testosterone and shit back in the day, and getting sick from it and things like that. Willie Stargell and Hank Aaron and Joe Morgan and all these stars from the 50s, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, all those guys, the 50s, 60s, 70s. It's been talked about by guys,
20 years later, once we got to the 90s and stuff like that, and the steroid era became a thing, we talked about how prevalent amphetamines were in the game in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and taking amphetamines and things like that. Obviously, performance enhancing drugs as they develop, and it seems like they get better and better naturally. Guys are going to start, okay, this is the new performance enhancing drug, and you're taking that now as opposed to the other ones. But for me, that's like the game's always worked that way. Pitchers were throwing spitballs and things like that back in the day, right? And getting away with doctoring the baseball in all different types of ways. So it just seems like a silly idea, like, oh, well, this guy was cheating. Well, a lot of guys were cheating. That's the name of the game with baseball,
Right.
especially baseball, more than any of the other sports.
Look at the Astros. They got away with cheating, and Manfred just slapped those guys on the wrists.
Well, and one of my favorite stories with the Astros thing was one of the players from the 80s White Sox teams that played for Tony La Russa's 80 White Sox teams, 1980s White Sox teams, before La Russa went to the A's and before he came back to coach for the White Sox now. But he talked about at old Comiskey Park, how they would, that they had an old Gatorade sign out in the outfield of old Comiskey Park, and one of the equipment guys there found a way to cut a hole in the Gatorade sign and put one of those old camcorders, when camcorders were becoming huge in the 80s, and that's how America's Funniest Home Videos, rest in peace Bob Saget, how that became big, right? But in the 80s, Daniel, you remember maybe more than any of us. I remember my dad always walking around with a camcorder recording everything, but you remember more than anything when it became a huge fad. But he says he remembers an equipment guy cutting a hole in the Gatorade sign and putting a camcorder out there, and then being able to, literally record, other teams' catchers' signs and stuff like that. And this is the 80s, So you're like, you can't. Again, that's what I'm talking about. Like as things have developed, the ways of cheating, and the ways of I guess, getting away with cheating or whatever have developed. If they were using camcorders to cheat in the 80s by cutting a hole in a Gatorade sign in the outfield, this shit's been going on forever. It's just now that we have HD cameras and different things like that, it's to a point where you can sit here and do it at a much more advanced stage. But I'm not like losing sleep over it, because I know, based off of stories like that shit like this has been going on forever. Teams have been trying to find a way to get an advantage. Players try to find a way to get an advantage. Any little thing you can do to get an advantage, you're going to do it. And as long as everybody's trying to do the same shit, who cares? And it seems like the players didn't care. We know owners didn't care. It was making them money. Mm-hmm. We know guys like Bud Selig and executives with baseball didn't give a fuck because it was making them money and it was bringing the sport back to a popular level that it hadn't been to in a long time. So, I was entertained by 500-foot home runs. Daniel, I know you were. For me and Frank, Frank, I know we've talked about it. So who cares in this whole thing? Baseball writers who have their feelings hurt because Joe Schmo player was a jerk to them when they were asking him questions in an interview that they didn't feel like it. Like, who? Okay, fuck you. I don't give a fuck about your random baseball writer or Association of America person who has his feelings hurt because Jeff Kent was a jerk to him. So now, therefore, Jeff Kent's never going to be in the Hall of Fame. You look at Jeff Kent's stats compared to any second baseman ever, and you're like, wow, that guy should be in the Hall of Fame. But he's never going to be because, that guy was a jerk. Okay, well, who cares? A lot of people are jerks. I don't care. Stop with this nonsense. It's ridiculous at this point. I think I've had enough of it.
And I think you do have enough of it. And I think it's going to come to a point, especially after this year's voting, people are going to have enough, and it's going to be like, hey, it's time to alter the election process. I don't know what the best way will be, because
how do you do it? What would be your way to alter it?
See, I do think the writers should have a vote. I think they should have, I guess, their weight in the vote. They should have a weight in the vote, and then I guess players and coaches should have some say. And with fan votes, I know it's a popular option, but then there's going to be that, that one troll vote where it's going to rack up so many votes that somebody's going to be in pick an irrelevant player. Somebody completely irrelevant, getting into the Hall of Fame because a lot of fans outnumber the vote. So I think it should be writers and players, coaches, front office, but with a weighted system.
I completely disagree about at this point. I don't. The Baseball Writers of Association of America. Who the fuck? Why do y'all get the vote on anything? That to me, I'm so fed up with the idea. Like, Who are y'all? Why don't we have players? And we should have players from all different generations. You should have great players, elite players, Hall of Fame players. Have a Hall of Fame panel where you've got other Hall of Fame players voting on this shit or whatever. Like, that's like, I'm to a point where that's like really maybe the only way to fix any of this, because then they're going to be honest, because a lot of them know,
Right.
Hey, I was taking this or I was doing that or whatever was the popular fad at the time. From a cheat perspective, we were all doing it, and none of them have to even be public about it. You don't have to, like, it doesn't have to be talked about. It's just known. Hey, they're not going to take into effect the fact that, oh, well, this guy was connected to steroids. None of them care. They know how hard it is to hit a ball 500 feet and square up a 99-mile-per-hour fastball. It don't matter how fucking many steroids you're taking. And me and everybody in this conversation right now, we could take as many steroids or PEDs as we wanted to, and none of us are squaring up a 99-mile-per-hour fastball and hitting it 500 feet. I don't care how many steroid PEDs of any kind that we take. It ain't happening.
Now, I'm okay with them waiting to get in. And I don't think they should be first ballot, but maybe make them wait a couple of years, because some of those guys did kind of deny it, and until there was already proof out there, like, boom, you used it.
Well, what are you going to do?
Just acknowledge it at some point, and that's what Bonds was precious to do. He refused to acknowledge it, refused to get tested because he didn't want to get busted. It's just like, acknowledge it. Just let it go. At some point, it's going to go away, and then you'll get in. Don't just keep telling people they're crazy for thinking that you used it when it was kind of obvious that you're using it to begin with. You don't just blow up to the size that he did out of the blue from an injury, and then come back 3 months later, 100 pounds like heavier than you were, and then stop like stealing bases.
Sure, it's like when Lenny Dykstra showed up to Philly spring training in '93, and they were even making jokes. Like Mickey Mordini was talking with the media, and they're like, "What have you been doing, Mickey, to stay in shape this offseason?" He's like, "I've been taking vitamins and working out. Obviously, I haven't been taking those Lenny Dykstra vitamins, but I've been taking vitamins." They were all making jokes of it, right? I mean, like, it was kind of like an inside joke within the baseball industry at the time that this is something going on. But I think for me, that's why I'm like, if I'm Barry, if I'm any of these guys, why would I admit to anything? There's nothing for me to admit to. Like, everybody here was a part of this. Like, it's not like baseball had any drug testing policies in place. It's not like owners or executives or Bud Selig or people like that had a problem with it. They were all kind of a part of letting this issue become as big as it was. So you know what? If I'm Barry and I'm Roger Clemens and I'm any of these guys, I'm not admitting any wrongdoing either, because I don't feel like I did anything wrong. It's not, at the end of the day, if you're Barry Bonds, you're the one that hit 700 and whatever home runs. Why would you admit to doing anything wrong? Fuck that. I'm the one that hit all those home runs. You know what I mean? It wasn't the steroids that had a bat in their hand that were hitting those home runs. It was me. So I mean, I get what you say, but I get where players like, and even guys like Ortiz have been defensive about it. It's not like Ortiz has ever come out and been like, yeah, I used it. I stuck a needle in my ass and injected myself with steroids. Like, I understand guys wanting to protect their image and be defensive about it. You're at a time where, like, you almost felt like it was being encouraged by professional baseball in a lot of ways, Bud Selig and guys like that. It wasn't like they were saying, go ahead and do it, but they also knew that this was a big thing that everybody was doing, and none of them were telling you not to do it or that they wanted you to stop. It was okay, hey, whatever, it's good for business. And, okay, let's all just, you guys are grown men. It is what it is. I'm not going to police it, whatever. And at that point, if you're a player and you were anybody that was involved in the game at that point that knew this was the case, I don't know, it kind of becomes weird. Like, I know it's taboo. It kind of sounds taboo, right? But it's one of those things where you're like, how was anybody that was involved in the game at that point supposed to come out and be like, yeah, I did something wrong? No, you didn't. You really didn't. At the end of the day, if you know 98%, if you know forget about professional sports. If any of us are doing a job and you know that everybody else at your job is taking a supplement of some kind that's going to make them better at the job, and if you don't start taking the same supplement to get on their level, you might end up out of a job, right? So all of a sudden now it's that's the competition that's going on, and we all have to kind of do the same shit in order to be able to compete with each other and make this shit happen. You're not feeling like you're doing anything wrong. You just understand this is, let's be honest, we're all grown here. Fuck rules. Sometimes rules have to be broken in order for things to, get done. It's one of those situations for me with steroids and professional sports in general, but especially baseball, where it just seems like, that's kind of been a gamesmanship thing in baseball forever when it comes to stealing signs and drug use and, You're telling me guys like Mickey Mantle weren't fucking snorting lines of cocaine, pumping lines of cocaine off the fucking tables in the clubhouse, 20 minutes before going out to play a Yankees game in the 1950s or 60s? Like, come on, you know what I'm saying? Like, of course they were. We don't know how prevalent that shit was in clubhouses. Pete Rose was fucking sleeping with 14-year-olds. He had a dude that literally brought him fucking teenage girls to fuck in the Cincinnati Reds clubhouse. Like, so who knows what the fuck was really going on and how deep and prevalent any of this shit was unless you were really there. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to be the naive person that's like, oh, well, they were doing this or they were doing that. Well, there was probably a lot of shit going on.
Now,
None of us know how deep it goes. So let them all in. Fuck it.
Now, do you want a situation where maybe you say, I'm going to cut the line down here when we decide to actually police it? Anybody before that line, we're going to kind of keep it as we're not going to harm you with the Hall of Fame because that's how it was back then. But from here, moving on, we got to police it the way we're going to do it with the testing and everything. And if you test positive, it might hurt your image with making the Hall of Fame. How do you feel about that? Or do you still want
guys like Ryan Braun, once Ryan Braun tested positive after winning the MVP, right? Well, at that point, you had like a strict drug testing policy in place. Mm-hmm. There was a policy in place that you broke rules. Now, whether there should have been a policy in place that was strict or not back in the 80s, 90s, all that, okay, that's a different conversation. But I think that's always been a big part of my argument is you didn't really have a drug testing policy at the point where steroids was getting out of control in the game, and that led, that helped contribute to it, sure. But they still weren't breaking rules. If you don't have a drug testing policy, there's not really any rules that you're breaking. By the time guys like Ryan Braun and Alex Rodriquez got busted, right? You had a lot of guys that circa 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. How many times did Robbie Cano get busted? He's been busted 2 or 3 times now in his MLB career, right? And you're like, a guy like Robbie Cano, who when he was with the Yankees and he was young, was trending towards a Hall of Fame career. Now, has been busted 3 times, and you're kind of like, that guy's got no chance. Guys like Ryan Braun, you just shake your head at him and go, wow, give back your MVP award almost. You know what I mean? Hell, there was a delivery driver for FedEx or whatever it was that delivered his drug testing, to MLB baseball that he tried to throw under the bus and went, oh, well, this guy tarnished my, tainted my test. And that guy got fired. If you remember correctly, the delivery driver got fired because Ryan Braun made this big deal. My test must have been tainted by that guy. And you're like, dude, you cost somebody their job all because you were too stubborn to be like, yeah, you know what? I was cheating and taking steroids and shit. That's fucked up. That's you brought other people into this shit.
I do like the fact though that they have been like, okay, we need to start policing it now. We need to put the rules in place. But I'm in agreement with you that at the line where they start doing it, they need to kind of be like, okay, we gotta just let them get away with whatnot because there was a different era then. We didn't really police it at that time, so we can't kind of use the same rules now that we use for those guys because it was a different time. Just let them in. I think just make them wait a couple years, then put him in. You don't have to make him first ballot where it's like, okay, he's first ballot, but at least let him in. He deserves it. Him, McGuire, Sosa, they were
create a separate wing.
Yeah,
they were a separate wing of the Hall of Fame.
They were big stars at the time where we needed it most, where they were just slinging home runs, putting people in seats at a time that baseball wasn't as big, and it helped the baseball become something again for a while, and we should thank them for it, not kind of knock them down just because of the steroids. Maybe they have reasons for doing it. We don't know.
I'll never forget Hank Aaron in his autobiography. Hank Aaron, had there was a chapter in there where he had talked about one of his teammates. He had felt like later in his career he was slowing down a little bit, and one of his teammates had offered him this amphetamine pill. And he started taking this amphetamine pill. And in his autobiography, Hank Aaron claims that after a couple weeks, he stopped taking it because he just didn't feel right about the whole situation. But I call bullshit, obviously. Hank Aaron hit 275 home runs after he was 35 years old. Of course you were taking the amphetamines, in the later stages of your career. I don't give a fuck. I'm not blaming you. I would do the same shit, sure. But if, if you're talking about it that way in your autobiography, let's not all be naive and act, oh, I believe he stopped it after 2 weeks. Really? Like, do you still believe in Santa Claus and shit too? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, you know what I mean? Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny are real too. I'm sorry, Frank. I broke your heart. I know you. I know you.
Sorry.
Santa.
Sorry.
It said Santa on the package. I mean, how could it not be from Santa? It said Santa right there on the
Yeah,
tag.
and it almost looks like my mom's writing. It's Santa. Yeah, Santa writes like my mom.
He was just good enough not to get caught. That's it. He just never got caught. So
you guys remember Greenies when Greenies became it? The Mike Schmidt talked about when Greenies were a huge thing in the 70s and 80s. It was like a mixture of like amphetamine and what became human growth hormones. And it was kind of like a thing that bodybuilders and shit like that were using. Like, you know, I mean, all that stuff was, you know, was big in the game. And then obviously we know Darryl Strawberry and you know, Dwight Gooden, all those guys that were involved with cocaine and got busted with cocaine and shit. So again, how prevalent was a drug like that, you know, and things like that in clubhouses. I don't want to sit here and act like, oh, well, the steroid era. Okay, well, do we really know that guys from every other era weren't cheating too? No, we don't, right? And like, you just don't know that. Were they? I guess maybe we can't prove it, but you also don't know if they were or not. So it's such a silly thing for me to sit here and try to act and play this argument of, let's be honest, we're all grown men. You know, we all know if the temptation is there, like, hey, you know, if you take this drug, it might make you this much better at your job. And next thing you know, you're making an extra $500,000, $1 million a year. You know, I'm not going to be silly and be naive and act like, you know, it's not possible that guys have been cheating forever, you know, in professional sports. As a matter of fact, I think it's more likely that they were than it isn't. So I don't even know how you handle it. Again, like, I guess you get all these old guys that are the baseball writers and eventually they'll all fucking retire from their gigs, and you get guys in there that'll be better and younger and kind of appreciate this a little bit more or whatever, and realize, hey man, baseball was awesome at that time when those guys were doing what they were doing, and at some point they get in or whatever. But should it be altered? I guess it depends on that. You know, I don't know if the system needs to be blown up, but like, you know, like in college football, it seems like they talk about changing the BCS system, you know, every couple years. Like, and you're at least having a conversation about whether it should be 4 teams, 8 teams, you know, whatever the conversation is. I think you got to get to a point where you're just like, you know, it's become almost more of a popularity contest than the Pro Bowl has in the NFL, it seems like, with these guys that are getting into the Hall of Fame. And that shouldn't be what this is either. You know, you don't have to like somebody to realize, yeah, that guy was a phenomenal fucking player. You know, I don't know. It just, you know, we talked about this off the air, you know, and I'll bring it up because he's a Philly, right? And we talk about a guy like, you know, like Jimmy Rollins, who, you know, everybody in Philly for the most part loved the guy. He had, you know, a couple people that would give him some heat when he was here, but, you know, when he didn't hustle or things like that. But still, you know, I mean, the guy, it seemed like even when he got benched for not hustling or things like that, or got heat for not hustling, he'd acknowledge it and man up and be like, hey, you know, I need to be better, sort of thing. And you'd appreciate that. But, you know, he was the second best shortstop in baseball. You know, that's not just an opinion. When you looked at the stats, this all came out, you know, over this past week because he was on the Hall of Fame ballot. And I knew the guy was good. I think we all knew the guy was good, had the Hall of Fame year in 07 that was historically great. MVP award, World Series championship, 30-30 season. You know, I've always said his numbers, you know, historically, when you compare him side by side to a guy like Barry Larkin, his numbers really look similar to a guy like Barry Larkin for the Reds. And you're like, if Barry Larkin's a Hall of Famer, Jimmy should be too. But I think if you dig deeper than that, he's top 10 in every statistical category when it comes to shortstops all time. And then when you look at the era that he played in, you know, Jeter was obviously, you know, in a class of his own. But outside of Jeter, when you say who was the second best shortstop in baseball and who consistently, you know, was able to maintain that greatness, you know, over like, you know, a period of time outside of Jeter, Jimmy Rollins is probably the second best shortstop in baseball. You know, Jose Reyes had a couple good years. Troy Tulowitzki had a couple good years, right? But none of them maintained it the way that Jimmy did for pretty much a decade, where he was consistently the second best shortstop in baseball outside of Derek Jeter. How is that guy not a Hall of Famer? Or at least how does he not? He got 11% of the vote. I'm not saying he should be a first ballot guy, and I didn't think he was going to be first ballot. Barry Larkin wasn't first ballot. But I thought, you know, when I looked at it, I'm like, you know, this is a guy that I thought would get at least enough of the vote where you said, okay, he's going to start trending in the right direction. And by the time you get to year 5 or 6, We're going to be having the Scott Rolen conversation like we're having. Roland's going to be a Hall of Famer probably next year, where he's trending in the direction where he'll probably get enough of the vote next year where he becomes a Hall of Famer. Is 11% of the vote in your first year enough for you to start trending? And Frank, you might know a little bit more of this. I know you're great with the numbers and you probably know like some of this stuff off the top of your head a little bit more than I would. But how many guys have had 11% of the vote in their first year and then like over the next 5 years have trended enough in the right direction to get to a point where they became Hall of Famers?
I don't even know, to be honest. I mean,
does that seem like a low number? Does that seem like a low percentage?
It seems like a low number. Then when you go into future ballots, so who was it that had the 11%?
Well, Jimmy Rollins had the 11%.
Rollins?
Yeah.
Right, so let me pull up the potential.
Like, look at a guy like Alan Trammell. How much of a vote did Alan Trammell have in his first year? Because that's probably where you're comparing at it. Look at Barry Larkin's first year, like names like that. But if Barry Larkin and Alan Trammell and guys like that are in the Hall of Fame, it seems almost like Jimmy has to be.
Yeah, Jimmy, I mean, taking a look at it, I mean, going into next year's ballot, I mean, the guys that Jimmy's going to be up against going to the guys. I mean, you have Scott Rolen, Todd Helton. I think Helton's going to get in. Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones.
Yeah, Helton's a Hall of Famer
Sheffield.
and Wagner's a Hall of Famer. I don't know if they get in next year, but I agree. I think Rolen, Wagner, Helton, all three of those guys are Hall of
Sheffield,
Famers.
his 9th year on the ballot. He's on the ballot. A-Rod.
He's trending in the right direction. I don't know if he'll get there, but he's another guy. Is like, just use your eyes. Forget about the steroids. Gary Sheffield's a Hall of Famer, right?
Oh, absolutely. Gary Sheffield's a Hall of Famer.
Gary Sheffield
how do you leave out one of the greatest batting stances in baseball history?
He could absolutely rake. You know what I mean? I mean, that dude in his prime.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, with the Brewers and the Marlins. And then he went to the Braves and fucking killed us. And then he was at the, I mean, the dude always raked. I mean, I know Gary personally now. I've actually had him down here. That's a fun story where I had 31 ejections. Gary Sheffield coaches travel baseball now down here in Florida. And his son sucker punched a shortstop in a game that I had where Gary was coaching. And it started this benches clearing brawl. And we ended up having 31 ejections. And every time I have Gary now, anytime I umpire a game where Gary's coaching, we laugh about it. That's one of those things that we bring up and laugh about. I'm trying to get him to come on the podcast. Daniel, wouldn't it be fun to have Gary Sheffield come on and talk baseball with us? Oh, my God. I'm trying to get him to come on with us.
I'd like to hear the stories here about how his son coming up playing baseball since his son's playing now. Just getting all that would be awesome.
Well, he grew up down here in Tampa, and then he's his uncle. I believe he's the nephew of Doc Gooden, if I remember correctly. Yes. Gary's uncle is Dwight Doc Gooden.
Yes.
So I mean, like that's a whole baseball like bloodline there. All right. He's a good dude. He talked about how much he hates the current game and all that. And I was like, you know what, dude, you'd be perfect to come on my show because I don't need you to kiss baseball's ass. Come on and talk shit as much as you want. Talk about how much you hate the current game. I don't care. That'll be fun conversation. Well, plenty of people that'll agree with that.
Now, do you think that one thing that could help do the Hall of Fame is to switch out who does the voting every year? You always switch out the people voting because right now it's the same people do it every year.
I'd get rid of the Baseball Writers Association in general. They don't need to be voting literally. And I don't want to say this disrespectfully because I think certain guys are qualified to vote even if they haven't played. Yeah. But I'm at a point where if you didn't play the game, you don't need to be voting on this shit. Baseball wise, at least, because it seems like these writers have been like, oh, well, that guy used steroids. Oh, stop it. Like if you could take a pill that would make you a better journalist than every other journalist that you were working with, you're telling me you wouldn't take that pill or that supplement to make you, that much better of a journalist than all of your other colleagues. That way you knew your job security is always going to be legit. You might get the raise and get extra money that other people wouldn't get. You're going to get the roles and the assignments that other people wouldn't get. Like, stop. Like, that's nonsense. And I'm just so fed up with it. They've proven that they're too childish to be able to handle that role. So just get rid of them. I want players, ex-players, other Hall of Famers, coaches. I want people like that voting on it from now on.
I think that would work best because they're the ones that played it. They can be the ones that can kind of judge and be like, he deserves to be in it, or he might just miss it. I think where they might just be thinking of is the fact that if you let them do it, maybe everybody makes it then because you got your friends who might have not been as great, and they'll be like, okay, he's in just because he was my best
popularity
friend.
Contest sort of thing. I mean, I guess that's where, like, you've got to pick certain guys. Now, this is where it gets fun because you've got a ton of guys. It's almost like in the NBA, like where Chris Paul is, like, you know, the head of the player association. Like, you've got to, you know, you've obviously got to, like, you know, appoint certain players or certain people to that role where you trust the fact that they're going to actually vote and be fair and not, you know, make it into a popularity contest sort of thing. But, like, all right, if David Ortiz and Ken Griffey Jr. are leading, you know, like some type of, you know, like, you know, association that's now like those are the two players that lead this whole idea of getting the vote on future Hall of Famers or something. You know, Derek Jeter's involved with it, and Cal Ripken Jr. and you want to get as many, you know, pick guys from the past from different eras, maybe that you still respect, whatever. I don't know, but I feel like you have enough guys that you could make sure, okay, we've got certain guys that are a part of this, just like the college football playoff committee, you know, where they've appointed certain people that they trust and that their reputation is what it is for a reason. And that's why they've been appointed to those positions. I mean, in hell, even if you get a couple players in there that are voting, oh, it's a popularity contest. Well, it can't be any worse than what the fuck we've currently got with the baseball writers. I mean, you know, good Lord, you know, it can't get any worse. So fuck it. I'll still ride with it. I don't care. They're still more qualified than these journalists that are voting on it. So hell, let it be. Go ahead, David Ortiz. Vote for whoever you want. I don't care.
It's like the politicians. That's what it's like. That they do things their way. If they don't like you or if you piss them off, then it's like it gives them the reason to just write you off the ballot in general, whether you like
know,
it
I mean,
or not.
And there's actually been a thing. I mean, yeah, that's not just anything new. That's been going on forever. Like I said, there's a reason Jeff Kent with 450. Jeff Kent's got more career home runs than any second baseman ever, and he's not even sniffing the Hall of Fame. How is that guy not in the Hall? You've got remember the meme that's been going around this week? You've got the career hits leader, the career home run leader, you know, and you've got the all-time Cy Young Award winner leader, and none of them are in the Hall of Fame. And it's almost like you can't have a Hall of Fame that has any type of respect attached to it unless those guys are in the Hall of Fame, right? Could you imagine if you had a Hall of Fame, you know, like Peyton Manning's not in the NFL Hall of Fame because, you know, whatever fucking stupid reason you want to attach to it, or Wayne Gretzky's not in the NHL Hall of Fame because, you know, whatever reason, and Michael Jordan's not in the NBA Hall of Fame because, oh, well, you know, there's all those rumors about his first retirement. He didn't retire. That was a suspension because he had gambling issues. Even if it was, great. That's even better. That even adds to the legacy. He didn't retire to go play minor league baseball. He had such a gambling problem. He was in so deep with the mob that they forced him to fucking take a break from the sport to get out of the spotlight so that he wouldn't get fucking murdered like his dad did. That was all the fucking rumors that his dad got murdered by the mob because, you know, he had all the, you know, the gambling debts and shit. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But you know what? I don't think somebody quits basketball in their prime to go play minor league baseball just because. So, you know, I think there is something to it. But who cares? It doesn't affect his reputation or his legacy to me. These people that want to be like, oh, well, like that's an asterisk next to his legacy. Why? Because you say so. Like, I mean, if you need to create a separate wing of the Hall of Fame to let these steroid guys in, and then it has to stay on their plaque that they've got these connections to steroids or whatever. If that's what you got to do to like let some of these people sleep at night and get them to be okay with letting guys like that in, fine. But I still think that's ridiculous. Fuck it. Like, again, like, you know what? Fuck your feelings. Get over it. Grow the fuck up. This isn't middle school. Well, it's not fair. Some of them were using steroids and other guys weren't. Well, you know what? If they could stick a needle on their ass and make it so that they could hit 500-foot home runs, so could everybody. And if you were one of these people that was doing it, oh, well, that's on you. Get the fuck over it. Fuck your feelings. Life ain't fair sometimes, and that's just the way it goes. But, I mean, when I go to Cooperstown to go see the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I'm paying good money, and you know they probably charge out the ass to get in there. I've never been there, Frank. I don't know if you've been there, Daniel. I don't know if you've been there. But I can imagine it's probably overpriced, right? Let's be honest. Any place all these amusement parks, they're all overpriced, right? So I can imagine it's probably pretty expensive to go see the Baseball Hall of Fame and go for a tour on a normal day. And you're telling me I paid all this money to go there, and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and I don't have none of them are here because some media members decided that, oh, well, you know what? They shouldn't be in because they use drugs. Oh, stop it. Come on. Seriously? Great. Just what I want to see. I want to see Tim Raines, his memorial in place of Barry Bonds because, Tim Raines wasn't smoking crack or nothing, right? I mean, good Lord.
At some point, they're going to have to redo it, find out a better way to do the judging on it, get everybody that's supposed to be in it. Like, of course, these guys are going to probably wind up being in it on the veterans committee voting that they do like a week beforehand. So at least they're going to get in a little bit later than what they should have gotten in, but at least at some point.
Yeah.
And kind of revamp the system, fix it, and then make sure that it's done the right way, not kind of this
Can you
way
have a
where-
computer system of some kind? Like, I mean, like I know they did this with college football for a while, right? And like, I mean, a guy like Bill James, Frank, you're familiar with him, right?
Of course. I
Analytically
mean,
speaking,
but also
a guy
if you
that,
want,
you know, really kind of created a system that does measure a lot of that stuff. I don't want to go fully in that direction, but I feel like
I don't
you could
think
create a
it'll
weighted
work in
system, as
that
you
way,
guys
though.
are talking about, with a computer and all that kind of brings in all the stats and all
But
that.
here's
And
the
kind of
thing with
makes
the
it go.
computerized system. This is like how the BCS worked. You know, it factored in the human and the computers. So maybe a combination of both can work it out. And as I said earlier, if you weigh it out where, okay, maybe a certain system gets more credit to where credit's due. Let's say a committee of former players and coaches, you have the writers have a poll, and then you have something computerized. Something like that can work. I mean, that's how the BCS worked for years. Even though the BCS was heavily flawed, you know, it's a step in the right direction if you combine both the human and the computer factor. Now, the computer
there's got to be
might
something.
have some flukes in the system, but I mean, that's what you're probably going to get if you try to incorporate the computers and the sabermetrics. Everybody talks about analytics and sabermetrics. You know, that's going to play some weird factor if you put in the computer stuff.
Well, and what's funny about that is people try to bring up that argument. Like, I've heard that argument for why Jimmy Rollins shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. Well, look at his career WAR. And I was like, yeah, like when you look at it, you're like, you know, and I'm not a huge analytics guy, but there's a lot of things there that, you know, I get it, you know, on base percentage and things like that being important. But I think, you know, there needs to be some balance with it. But when you look at his WAR, you're like, yeah, which, you know, it is low, which is weird to me. I know he was, you know, wasn't a high on base percentage guy, but Jimmy's defense always seemed to be elite, right? And his base running was elite. And all these other things that he did at an elite level that seemed to make up for all that. But even when you look at his WAR and you're like, oh, wow, that WAR's low. When you look at it, that's part of what I was talking about earlier with him being second to Derek Jeter. The only shortstop that had a higher WAR than Jimmy Rollins at any point, you know, like consistently was Jeter. And apparently from 2001 to 2014, Jimmy actually had a higher WAR than Derek Jeter did. Jimmy was number one in shortstops for WAR from 2001 to 2014, a 15-year stretch. So you want to talk about like consistency. Jimmy was number one in WAR and number one in pretty much every statistical category in the National League. And there was even a few categories in the Major League that he led, but that's where Jeter and a few other guys like that came in. But still, when you're talking about a guy that like is up there, like, dude, if you're better than Derek Jeter, you know, in a lot of categories at your peak years of your career, you're a Hall of Famer. I don't give a fuck what any of these other numbers say. Jeter was kind of like, you know, the up, you know, he's, you know, that's the alpha male, right? That's who you're comparing yourself to. Like, if you're trying to be like, hey, who do I need to be as a player? It don't get any better. That's who you're trying to be. So if you're better than him in certain categories, and you're talking about, yeah, both of them were playing together in the same decade, the same era, and Jimmy's better than Jeter in some categories and has better statistics in certain areas than Jeter did. I mean, for me, how does Jeter get 99% of the vote and is in on the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, and Jimmy's got 11% of the vote and is going to struggle to ever make it at all? That's a little ridiculous. That's a New York bias.
Popularity. It's all about popularity.
That's popularity. That's all that is. Because you're talking about a dude that was not that far behind Jeter when it came to, at the time, you know, you just look at the stats of it. Yeah, it was Jeter and everybody else. But Rollins was always the guy that was right there nipping at his heels. If there was anybody that you could say, who's challenging Derek Jeter for the best shortstop in baseball, it was always Jimmy Rollins. That was consistently the name, you know, that was brought up. And there was even years where Jeter was hurt and shit like that. We used to, hey, Jimmy was better. In 2007, when Jimmy won the MVP award, he was the best shortstop in baseball. No question about it. Like, not even debatable.
And I thought at some points that I thought Derek Jeter was a little overrated in that sense, where he was the best, because I thought he was one of the best hitting shortstops and one of the best defensive shortstops. But then he didn't hit for power. He didn't get that many RBIs in a season. It's just that he was the best defensive and the best hitter.
Well, his defense is actually really overrated. If you look at the analytics, his defense is the thing. His range. Think about how many Yankees games you used to watch, and you'd hear the Yankees announcer go, "Pass the diving Jeter." pass the diving Jeter, ground ball in the hole, pass the diving Jeter. He had no range. Now he would make the routine plays, but if you're a shortstop, you need to be able to get to the ball in the hole and make those types of plays. And he struggled with that. But Jeter, I don't really knock him because again, he's one of the best players ever, and he is one of the great players of our generation. But there's Yankees fans that I know that'll say Jeter's a top 5 player ever, and I'm like, Jeter's not even a top 5 Yankee ever. You want me to name 5 Yankees better? And I will right now off the top of my head. Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Mariano Rivera. There's 5 Yankees right there that are better than Derek Jeter, and you probably couldn't even argue it. All 5 of those guys are better. So, I mean, he was overrated in a lot of ways, but that's what happens when you're the face. He was the face of the sport for a while, and when you're the face of the sport, that's what happens sometimes. You get overrated, and there's a bias and all that. And
he was a nice guy. He was easy to talk to. On the biggest team in the MLB, the Yankees.
When
so
you're the face of the Yankees, and it's like Kobe being with the Lakers. There's a lot of things about Kobe that you go, he was maybe overrated in some areas, but it's Kobe, right? Like it's Kobe. Like it's Kobe. At the end of the day, you don't win 5 championships by accident. Same thing with Jeter. Yeah, there's some things there that you can knock it, and he's overrated. There's a lot of things where you're like, Yankees fans maybe worship him a little bit too much. But hey, when you're the face of baseball and you win 5 World Series championships in a decade, that's I can't really knock it that much, can I? You know what I mean? That's a bit, you're that damn good. So it is what it is. But to the point that I'm making, how does that guy get 99% of the vote and Jimmy only get 11% of the vote? It has to do with the fact that one guy's playing for New York, playing on national TV, pretty much every night. And it took Jimmy 7 years to pretty much get to a point where the Phillies were good enough for them to be on ESPN, for them to be on Fox, and for those to be things that were consistently happening. And I feel like that's where you talk about, the baseball writers. Yeah, well, the baseball writers don't recognize just how good Jimmy Rollins was from 2001 to 2005, 2006, before the Phillies were really good. Well, yeah, his MVP year was phenomenal. Yeah, we made the playoffs finally. Great. What about the 6 years before that, where he was still one of the best shortstops in baseball, and none of y'all really give him the credit he deserves because we weren't good enough for y'all to watch it or realize it? That's where players that played against him, and people that were like, like that guy, he was a pimp. Like even early on in his career, that guy, he was a great player. And that's where you got, players that kind of, got to watch him and play against him and go, yeah, that's how good that guy was. It's almost like Roy Halladay before he came to Philly. Like Roy Halladay in Toronto never got the credit that he really deserved because he was in Toronto, and you just never really got to watch him and be like, oh wow, this guy's awesome. People that were baseball, hardcore baseball junkies knew because you knew how good the guy was. But it's almost like it was unfair that he played in Toronto for all those years, early on in his career. Because if he played in a place like New York or LA, or any of these, better baseball markets where he would have gotten, a lot more exposure, it's almost like it would have been that much more special to get to watch a guy like that. It's like watching Clayton Kershaw with the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw with the Dodgers is different than Clayton Kershaw pitching for the Pirates for 15 years. It's, it's just different. The Dodgers are going to be on live TV and get a lot more exposure, and you get to see the guy's greatness on a lot more of a daily basis.
Tony Gwynn on the Padres, he killed it on the Padres, but
what a great example.
Yeah. Probably one of the best hitters that of all time. He was on a team in a small market, not getting the exposure majority of the time because he played in San Diego. Like, who's going to want to watch San Diego?
Nobody. I mean, even then, nobody was watching.
Yeah.
Could you believe at that time when they were on TNT and TBS every night because Ted Turner owned them? I mean, a guy like that, no matter where you're at in the country, you got to watch him every single night. That's why when people talk about Andrew Jones being a Hall of Famer, I actually think Andrew Jones is a Hall of Famer, but the only reason he gets as much love as he does is because he was on TV every night for the Braves for a decade. Because no matter where you were at in the country, TBS and TNT and Ted Turner and the Braves, they were on TV, in every market of the country.
Yeah, I completely
forgot
about those games. Watching the TBS games, and of course when the Cubs were when WGN
the Cubs another good example.
WGN,
sure. Yeah. So you're talking about guys like like that benefit from getting to play in more of a national market where you're like, you're on TV all the time. Mm-hmm. that sort of thing. There's just some bias to it that seems to be, you would think that like it shouldn't be that case anymore, but it still is. Like, okay, like I get it. Like Jimmy Rollins, when the vet, I get it. 01, there was like 10,000 people at the vet every night. Nobody was watching Phillies baseball, yet he was in the Rookie of the Year conversation and was an all-star that year. Deserves a lot of love for how good of a player he was those first few years. Doesn't get it because who the fuck was watching the Phillies at that time? Nobody. But that really shouldn't matter at this point. These writers that vote on this shit should have enough information at their disposal and enough, things, enough resources to be like, hey, I didn't need to, watch him on TBS or TNT every night. I know how good of a player the guy was, sort of thing.
What should matter is in 07, 08, when they were going through those battles, even 09, when Jimmy Rollins is getting those clutch hits.
Heart and soul of that team.
Games, yeah. That one game against the Dodgers is what sinks to my head when they're down.
And that's the other thing, right? It's about moments.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame players have moments, right? They have Hall of Fame moments attached to their careers. And it's not just about the stats or the numbers. We talk about that with a lot of guys. You're like, oh, well, like, where's like the Hall of Fame moment? Like we talk about Donovan not winning the Super Bowl. If he wins the Super Bowl, he's probably already in the Hall of Fame, right? But he doesn't win a Super Bowl. So therefore, you're always having this conversation about whether he is or he isn't, and like you talk about moments, like, Derek Jeter got labeled Mr. November because the clock struck midnight. It's November 1st. He hits the walk-off home run, and all that plays into the legacy of what Derek Jeter was. So you're not just talking about a guy in Jimmy who, yeah, his numbers were great, but then once the Phillies got good, he was the heart and soul of that team, and he's got the walk-off hit against Broxton in the 09 playoffs. He's got the MVP year. How many shortstops have had 30-30 seasons, have won MVP awards? That's a short list. If you go look at the list of shortstops that have won MVP awards, have had 30-30 seasons, it's a very short list. You know what I mean? Like it just is. And I'm almost pissed off because I was one of these guys. Like, if you look at my social media accounts and shit, I've been going to bat for Jimmy for a few years. Like, hey, this dude's a Hall of Famer, and now I'm like, damn, like if he doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, I'm almost going to be pissed off because like I almost took it as like a personal case of mine. Like, I love this dude. Can't wait to leave Florida and go see him in Cooperstown when he gets inducted. I'm going to make that 14, 24, whatever I don't even know how long it is to go from Florida to Cooperstown. I don't know if it's 14 hours, 20 hours, 18, I don't know, but I don't give a fuck. I'm taking that trek, and I'm going to meet up with the A2D fam up in Cooperstown, and we were going to go watch Jimmy Rollins get inducted together. And now I don't know what to think. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so pissed off that he didn't get more love in his first year on the ballot.
Yeah, he got 11%. I could see him getting more as the time goes on. Like
I could, yeah, I really, especially again.
As you see guys get knocked off the list, like eventually you're going to get to a point where like 2 or 3 guys are going to go on the list and get knocked off. You can only assume that some people will give him more love. Like a lot of people give Big Papi a lot of love. Maybe they go down and like, okay.
Eventually it's going to get to a point.
Now, yeah.
They're going to look at it and they'll go, okay, Jeter's in the Hall of Fame from that era. And they're going to look at it and go, well, what other shortstop do we have? Like, you know what? Like, why isn't this guy getting more love? Like, he was the second best shortstop behind Jeter. Like, why? Because you weren't as good as Derek Jeter, you're not a Hall of Famer? Well, that's kind of an unfair, bar to set, to be like, oh, well, yeah, like you were second best, but you were never anywhere close as good as Derek Jeter was. Well, what the fuck are we, like, what? Like, we're talking about a dude that's a top 2 or 3 shortstop of all time ever. You can maybe make the argument that Cal Ripken was better, that, an old school guy like Honest Wagner or somebody. But at the end of the day, like, Jeter's in the greatest shortstop ever conversation. Oh, well, because you weren't as good as that guy, you're not a Hall of Famer. What? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's kind of an unfair bar to set. And maybe that's going to hurt Jimmy, is the fact that he played in an era, in a decade where, like, no matter how good he was, no matter what the numbers were, even when he won the MVP award, even when he won the MVP, it seemed like, oh, yeah, he's the MVP. But, Derek Jeter still, like, no matter what, you were never going to get out of Derek Jeter's shadow at that time. And it's an unfair, yeah, but that's the way things work sometimes in pro sports. It's like playing, in the NBA when Michael Jordan was the best player in the league. It's like, no matter how good you were never going to be Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? You were never going to get out of that shadow. You're always going to play second fiddle to this guy. And maybe it hurt other guys, certain guys more than others, because they play in certain markets that didn't get the same exposure or whatever. But that's just the way it goes. Is it unfair? Yeah, it is. But what are you going to do? I guess you sit here and you bitch and fuss and you throw a hissy fit on the air like we're doing, and until you feel satisfied that you got it all off your chest, and you fought for your guy and you've shown the loyalty that you need for one of your guys. Because I think that's the other side of it. In Philly, it's not like we're not the Yankees, right? We don't have a million Hall of Famers. We're not the Lakers or the Celtics where you're one of these franchises with such a reputation where you're like, okay, if this guy doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, who cares? We've got 30 other ones. You know what I mean? Like you take pride in your guys that were good enough to get there, because we've seen a lot of shitty players in our years as Philadelphia sports fans. So when the great ones come along, you really do try to fight for them a little bit extra, because it just means that much more to us. So I think that's part of it on my end.
I think what deters people from him compared to Jeter is the batting average. I think that has to have something to do with it, because he has a career 265 average, whereas Jeter has a average 300 plus. And it's like
average is one of the most overrated stats in baseball for me, especially at shortstop more than anything else. Because look at all those shortstop. I mean, at shortstop, you remember, Daniel. You remember more than me and Frank do. You remember when shortstop used to be a position where they don't give a fuck if you're hitting $120. As long as you can play Gold Glove defense at the level of Ozzie Smith. Ozzie Smith has 28 career home runs. 28. Jimmy hit more home runs in his MVP year than Ozzie had in his entire career. Yet Ozzie's still considered one of the greatest shortstops ever, right?
Yeah, so, look at a guy like Omar Vasquel who lasted that long.
He's a guy that,
same thing.
I think when you look at it long term, again, he wasn't a good hitter, but he doesn't have the connecting stat. Like Ozzie Smith has World Series championships and things like that. And Ozzie Smith has Hall of Fame moments like the walk-off home run. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy. We all remember Jack Buck and that MLB moment, where Ozzie Smith had never hit a home run from the left side of the plate and he hits the walk-off home run in the playoffs. You've got Hall of Fame moments like that where Omar Vasquel's best known for talking shit about Jose Mesa and his fucking autobiography, because Jose, blew a save in the 97 World or 95 World, or whatever the fuck it was, and started that feud. And then he was an asshole to the press, and that hurt his, great. Like when you're borderline, you don't have any Hall of Fame moments, things hurt you. I still think Omar should probably be in, because what the shortstop position was at that time was what Omar Vasquel was, elite defense, and you didn't really have to be a guy that hit for a ton of average and all that. But that's still a story for another day. Jimmy was better offensively than Ozzie Smith and Omar Vasquel combined. Okay, let's put it like that, right? Like if we're really being honest, Jimmy Rollins is better offensively than both of those guys combined. And then if you add in Jimmy's defense and Jimmy's base running, it almost makes up for what you talk about. Oh, well, Jeter hit for a higher average. Yeah, but when did Derek Jeter ever steal 40 bases? When did Derek Jeter ever play defense at the level that Jimmy did? He didn't. So when you're stealing 40 bases and you're playing elite defense the way Jimmy did, I think it maybe makes up for the fact that Derek Jeter's hitting 320 and you're hitting 260, 270. Those things can balance each other out. I don't think they're that far apart as a player. Jeter's career high for home runs was like 24, right? Jimmy hit 25 and then hit 30 one year. Jeter was never a part of the 30-30 club. They both have MVP awards, sort of thing, right? Like, how many MVPs does Derek Jeter have? Just as many as Jimmy Rollins, right? They both have one apiece. As a matter of fact, I don't think Jeter won one. I think Jeter finished second. If I'm mistaken, maybe I thought Jeter won one in the night, but look that up for me. Frank, maybe you could look that up. I thought Jeter maybe won it in 99, but I might be mistaken. Did Derek Jeter ever win an MVP award?
I'm bringing it up right now.
Derek Jeter.
No, he was a 14-time All-Star World Series MVP. That's what he was.
But never won a regular season MVP.
Nope.
So Jimmy Rollins has one more MVP award than
Derek Jeter.
And they both played in the same era. So who's the better shortstop?
Crazy.
I mean, Derek Jeter's obviously the better player, but you see what I'm saying now? Like, that gap is not as far off as the voting would tell you that it is. One guy's got an MVP award and the other doesn't. And it's not, and a lot of people, no, Derek Jeter doesn't have an MVP. Jimmy Rollins does. How does that work? Telling me one guy isn't a little bit overrated?
And he's kind of prove your point. Kind of funny Derek Jeter has more home runs than Jimmy Rollins, but basically because he played longer than Rollins. He played like
I mean, they're similar there from a power perspective. But I mean, again, go look at this. How about Jimmy? How about this for a fun stat? Jimmy Rollins is the only shortstop in MLB history, the only one in history with 200 career home runs and I believe 300 career stolen bases or whatever the hell it is. His power speed combination. It's not like it's it's really good. No, his power speed combo is rare. Like it's all time.
Yeah, that
good
MVP
stuff.
year, that MVP year that he had with the 30 home runs, 94 RBIs.
30. Yeah.
He had 20 triples. 20.
Yeah.
Which
30 home runs, 40 stolen bases, 20 triples.
It's a good point to go with what you said, because usually you'll get a guy that does something like that, but he won't have the speed to match the power. He had a little bit of both. He had it all. He had it all. He was the total package at shortstop. There was maybe a couple years there where you looked at Jose Reyes with the Mets and you're like, hey, he's giving Jimmy a run for his money, but none of them ever maintained it. Tulowitzki had a couple good years with the Rockies, but none of them ever maintained it the way Jimmy did. And, again, when you talk about, I said, he's top 10 in every statistical category for shortstops. That's true. But even more than that, when you're talking about a guy that's the only player in the history of a position to do something from a power speed perspective the way Rollins has, nobody else ever at the position. He's the only one to hit, to hit as many home runs and steal as many bases as he has. I believe it's 200, 300. It might even be 200, 400. I have to look at how many stolen bases he has. But I believe he's the only player to have 200 home runs, 300 stolen bases at the shortstop position. That's a power speed combination. When you're the only one that's done that, hell, nobody else. How are you not a Hall of Fame? You're the only one. The only one. I really want to be more fired up than I am, Daniel. You know what I'm saying? I almost want to be dude, this is so disrespectful to a guy that was the heart and soul of this team, for so long, that we're over here having this conversation. I brought up all these stats that have shown he's not that far off from what Jeter was, yet we're over here having a conversation about the fact that, hopefully he trends in the right direction, but you know what? It's just as likely in 3 or 4 years that he's off the ballot as it is that he's trending in the right direction to become a Hall of Famer, right? If we're really being honest. 5 years from now, it could be just as likely that he's struggling to even maintain a spot on the ballot as it is for him to be trending in the direction to make it as a Hall of Famer, and that's sad. That's really sad. But I think next year will be the true stain of how it's going to be.
Is he going to trend forward or backwards? Yeah,
I think it trends forward.
Now, let's change pace a little bit, right?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I mean, listen, this is fun. I'm one of those guys, and Daniel, this is why I love that. When you come on, I was love this, because me and you could sit here and bullshit for hours about anything and make it entertaining and have it be something that people want to listen to. So as long as we're having a good conversation, I don't want to. I don't want to force, a change in conversation or anything like that. I just want to let the show dictate it. So, we don't have any guests tonight. Let's let it roll and have a good time with it. Fun talk. Got the NFL playoffs though tomorrow, right? You got championship weekend. Some intriguing battles. A lot of people want the Bengals to win. Whether they actually have a chance or not, I don't know.
I think from what we saw last week, watching how the Bengals and the Chiefs played out, I think we're probably going to expect another very entertaining game. But I think, the Bengals, they've been red hot. They've been probably the most unexpected team of the season. This is the Cinderella run. At least I remember going into the season, I think a lot of people had the Bengals finishing as one of the worst teams in the league, because you just don't know about Joe Burrow.
Didn't think they were ready. They just didn't look ready.
A lot of people they were ready, and especially how the first round pick went. It's picking Jamar Chase over Penny Sewell. Everybody else why would you pick Chase over Sewell? But the pick worked out great.
Brilliant, so right?
Far.
I mean, hey.
And what makes it kind of better was the fact that Penny Sewell did do good this year. It wasn't like he was bad. Everybody got on Sewell's case early on, but then he wound up being one of the very solid players on Detroit where like they plugged him in and he did his job. He was worthy of that pick. It's just that Jamar Chase just blew everybody away with what he did towards the end of the season with those that was the 200 plus 3 touchdown game that just came out of nowhere.
We would never see a better rookie season from a receiver than Randy Moss did like 20-something years ago. And it's almost like Jamar Chase was like, yeah, like hold my beer. I got this.
Hold my beer. I mean, we saw Jefferson do it last year, and now Jamar Chase this year. It's crazy.
Jefferson had a nice year, but I mean, it just seemed like it was consistently solid the whole year. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, he didn't have games like Jamar Chase has had this year, you know, where like you're talking about 13 catch, 200-yard performances and shit. I mean,
no wonder
the dude has been unreal.
No wonder Ed Orgeron didn't want to go anywhere else but LSU because of those guys. You had a team in LSU that had Joe Burrow throwing it to Jefferson, to Jamar Chase. He had Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield. Yeah. It's like it's
pretty easy to win football games, right?
Yeah,
and then Hilaire's backup was Darrell Williams from the Bears. So it's like, and he won with the Chiefs. So it's like, it's crazy. It's like, of course, you just, at that time, it was like, just take this offensive player from LSU. You're guaranteed something. The past 2 years have been the wide receiver from LSU has blown up. And Jefferson does it. And then Chase is like, I can beat you. Watch. And then he comes in there. And it's not just like one thing that he did. It's like he had that early like preseason, like, dropping the ball everywhere, and then everybody's like, "Oh no, he's." It's
almost like was he not trolling people? You're almost like, like watch, he's gonna milk this. Like he even tried to milk it. Like, I've got drop issues, and then he's just gonna go out and have the greatest season a rookie receiver's ever had. And like, joke's on you, you idiots! Ha ha ha. But even you know what's scary is it's not even like he's their only weapon, right? I mean, they've got Mixon and T. Higgins. I mean, Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd was the #1 receiver last year. And then they go and put him as the #3 slot guy. And he wound up finishing with like 900 yards and 5 touchdowns as the #3. They always had 3 1,000-yard seasons. And
how about the Joe Cool nickname for Joe Burrow? Does that not fit him perfectly? It really is. Like Joe Cool, like he's got that. He does. You know what? People compare him to Montana. He's got more of a Joe Namath feel to me. Yeah. Real good-looking kid. He'd probably get all types of pussy if he wanted to. He running around New York City in fur coats and shit if he really wanted to, dating all types of supermodels. But he just prefers to run around Cincinnati and like live his life in private.
And everybody was like talking about how he got kind of snubbed by Ohio State, and that's why he went to LSU. He got snubbed by 2 teams. Georgia had him, and they were like, okay, we got this guy. I think at that time
they love those athletic quarterbacks, right? They want those guys at the arm-leg combination like a Justin Fields.
But that's who they had. They had Justin Fields there. So he goes to Ohio State, and he sits behind, I think, Barrett and Haskins. And then they bring in Justin Fields and like, we're going to start him ahead of you. So then he's like, okay, let me go to LSU now. And he just has one of the best college seasons ever in his second year at LSU. Comes into here, has a pretty good start before the MCL. That's what people don't realize. I know everybody was talking about Dak Prescott with his injury, how gruesome it was. Did everybody just forget that Joe Burrow had an ACL tear at week 11 of last year, and he wasn't even supposed to come back right away? He kind of had to work his ass off to be ready for a training camp. He comes in here. His knee was
mangled. Yeah. I mean, there was people that talking about whether or not he was going to be the same because of how bad the ACL injury was.
He comes in here. I'm one of them. Like, I actually thought they were going to finish 3rd place, not last place. That was a big prediction by me. I'm like, okay, they'll finish 3rd.
They'll take a step forward, right? They'll win like 8 games or something.
Yeah. Not fucking winning the 1st place in the division, doing it the way that they did, where I think they were like 5-1 in the division, maybe 4-2. I think it was 5-1 because they lost the last game because they sat everybody. Yep. And then come in the playoffs and win your first game I would say rather easily, but they had it controlled the whole game. And then last week come in there, and it wasn't the offense that won it. It was the defense and the kicker. They're the ones that won it last week, which is a good sign for them because their defense has been the question mark all year of that team. They knew they could count.
And one thing they have that is tough, is when you have an explosive offense in today's NFL. I mean, you can compete with anybody on any given Sunday if you have an explosive enough offense, and they do. They have an offense that can keep up with Kansas City, and if Kansas City wants to turn it into a slugfest and they're going up and down the field trading touchdowns, Cincinnati can keep up with you. They can play that type of game. That's fine. They might even prefer that type of game. Okay, cool. And let's just sling it all around the field. That's fine with us, sort of thing. But it's always scary to play a hot football team, in the playoffs. And a team that not just is hot, but has kind of figured out what their identity is, at the right time. And Cincinnati's figured out what their identity is, and they're just going to come out and try to throttle you. That's what they want to do. You've got one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's growing into a pimp, and you're just going to come out and try to throttle teams. And okay, hey, keep up with us if you can.
Yeah.
How ballsy is it to have a rookie kicker playing the way that he is? McPherson, he was. I think he led the league in most 50-yard field goals this year as well for Cincinnati. How big is it for them to have a guy like that in his rookie year that you can count on to make kicks in those situations? He's done it in majority of the games this year, and he's been kind of money for them for the most part. That is perfect for a team like that, to know that the whole team is young, and but you can count on a kicker like that, who's probably the youngest guy on the team, to make those 50-plus yarders with ease. I think that's crazy. And they've always been known for having kickers with issues, and it took just 1 year for them to bring a guy in and for him to kind of make things easy for you. Like they get that turnover against Tennessee last week and drive it up, and they just give him an easy kick right there. It's like your offense didn't even have to do anything but just make sure that they didn't turn the ball over, and you win the game. Things are just looking easy for you. I kind of feel happy for Zach Taylor with the first couple of years of him dealing with that job, where they had 1 win his first year and then 3 wins the next year. So he's 4 and 20 something. And then he finally comes into this year and he goes, I believe it's 10-7 or 11-6 and makes the playoffs. So for him, it's to the moon. Now, they're going up against Kansas City now. They beat them in Kansas City week 16 or 17. They beat them.
They beat them week 17.
Yeah. Are they going to be able to do it again? That's the question, because the offense has been kind of stagnant the past couple of games in the playoffs. They're going to have to pick things up on the offensive side for the defense to have any chance here after what I just saw last week in that game against Buffalo, where that fourth quarter, 2 minutes was like a crapshoot, 28 points in less than 2 minutes. I was surprised that everything was happening, and then it goes into overtime. Probably one of the best games I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah, it's arguably the best playoff game ever. It was up there with the people compared it to the Dolphins-Chargers game from the 80s. I believe the Kellen Winslow game, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of those types of games, but. It's one of those things where, if anything, I think if you're Cincinnati, you look at the final few minutes of that game and you go, that's how we got to attack them. Look at how Buffalo, and then they went back and forth. That's the type of game you need to get into. You need it to be a slugfest. We see how you can exploit them. You can throw the ball down the field and attack them. And, you're not going to come out and just kick their ass, but if you can make enough big plays down the field to match their big plays, you could be there at the end with a chance to win the game, and that's really all you can ask for.
And that's what Chase did. And that's what Chase did. Chase was able to just get behind the secondary, use his speed, and then Joe Burrows was able to put the touch on the ball, get it to him. You got to attack them downfield. That's
I think it's going to be hard for Kansas City to stop Cincinnati's offense. I really do. I think Cincinnati's going to be able to move the ball, score some points, and Kansas City's going to have, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to be special and do Patrick Mahomes stuff, and similar to what we saw how they beat Buffalo. You're like, oh, there's that guy, there's Superman. Oh, that's the guy we were all raving about a couple years ago when he was winning MVP awards. Sometimes you take for granted how special certain players are, and the things that they can do. And he's going to have to be every bit of that, because Joe Burrow is a very special player as well. And I think unlike Buffalo, where Buffalo did a lot of things to kind of shoot themselves in the foot in that game. they kicked the ball away instead of squibbing it there at the end. Just some questionable stuff from a coaching perspective where you're like, could have helped themselves a little bit better. Cincinnati seemed to have been doing the opposite. I'm not a real trying to sting the praises of Zach Taylor, but I mean, he's done a very solid job as a head coach for them, right? Like he hasn't done anything to really, I guess, put them in bad spots and hurt them, aka like Brandon Staley with the Chargers going for it on 4th down from his own 20 and shit like that. It's been a good balance of them going for it when they need to and being aggressive, but kicking field goals and taking points, at the right times in the games too. I think if you're Kansas City, like more than anything, like Buffalo, Tennessee, like those were the teams that everybody was projecting you to play at this point. And now you've got to play a team where you're like, man, they already beat us earlier this year and really gave us a tough game. And it's a little bit of a scary spot to be in if you're Kansas City. Everybody, the entire world has the money on you. I know I'm a degenerate. I'm a sports gambler. I know all the public money's on Kansas City tomorrow. I've seen it. I actually want to stay away from the game a little bit because it scares me. Yeah, that's where Vegas makes their money.
What scares me is the fact that they put the line out right away. It was Kansas City -7, even though the fact that they lost to them a couple of weeks ago. It's like I thought it would have been
way too many points.
I thought it would have been like -4 would have been like smart enough because then you're like, okay, it's not field goal. It gives you that wiggle room for it to go up and down. No, they just went out, boom, -7. That's where we're putting that. We
think it's growing even more. I mean, I don't know at this point. Like, I think it's probably a touchdown game, but like Cincinnati will be like, I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati has the ball like with like 2 or 3 minutes to play and a chance to go tie it or something. You know what I mean? Like,
they just need to know that, like, don't get greedy with the going downfield. Know that you have a top 5 running back back there that can kind of help you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you don't have to just focus on running with him. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Joe Mixon has been the guy there for years where they've counted on him before Burrow, Higgins, and Chase were even there. So use them a little bit. Like, I think what Buffalo did do good in the game was they controlled the time clock. They used time. They killed it to their benefit. It's just that on defense, they allowed a lot of big chunks of plays on themselves, even though they're one of the best defenses. They kind of got a little bit scared. They're like, okay, we're going to push back, yada, yada, yada. When it's like, just make sure they don't get behind you. That's all you got to do. And I think Cincinnati does that pretty good. It's just that they got to be better than that this week. Yep. It's like, it's 1 week to face A.J. Brown and the Titans offense. It's another thing to then go up and go Mahomes to Tyreek Hill and then Travis Kelce. That's
and then of course you got to factor in the crowd at Arrowhead too. Yeah. The Red Sea. That's a huge factor with this.
One of the best home field advantages in football.
Can Cincinnati handle that?
The Bills had to call a timeout twice last week because of the crowd. The crowd was so high that a couple of the players couldn't hear the play from Josh Allen in time. So they had to call a timeout both times, one in the first half and one in the second half. And that's a thing where you want to make sure you have all the timeouts that you have at the right times. You don't want to go into the last quarter down 10 with only one or two timeouts. You want to make sure you have 3 because you're disciplined enough not to have to use it early. So that's a thing that they got to watch out for, because I've seen them do it in these past couple of games where they made like these rookie mistakes of not hitting the play, not getting to the line in time, and then burning the timeout. You got to be focused. And then that's what the Chiefs are going to thrive on. They're going to thrive on making the other team make a mistake. And if I were the Bengals, I would do everything in my power to get the ball first so that you can try and score and get ahead right away. Because if you let them get the ball and then they score, you're going to be playing catch up the whole game. So you would rather be the one going ahead all game rather than catch up.
I'll tell you what, it's hard to go to 3 straight Super Bowls when you think about it, right? Like with 3 straight championship games, like in any sport, no matter what we're talking about, like going to 3 straight, World Series, NBA Finals, Stanley Cups, Super Bowls. Like, I mean, it's hard, and the percentages aren't really like in your favor. You know what I mean? Like it's if you go, oh yeah, what are the chances that a team goes to 3 straight Super Bowls? You're like, 3 straight, yeah, back to back's hard enough. Then you go to 3 straight. We're talking about 3 straight. Like, I think Kansas City's the better team, but like I'm telling you, like, something just feels fluky about it. Right? Like again, it's hard. It's hard to go to 3 straight. Mahomes, I don't think has ever lost a playoff game at home in his career, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's undefeated at home in the playoffs.
Oh no, he lost once to the Patriots in overtime.
Is that what? But he's won 6 straight or something.
Yeah,
at home.
Yeah. That was his first. That was his first game. His rookie. I mean, his second year.
Lost to Tom Brady or whatever at home in the playoff or whatever it was, right? But I mean, won 6 straight. I mean, there's almost things where you're like, these are the way like some of these things like come to an end. Like everybody and their sister thinks Kansas City's going to win. All the public money's on Kansas City. Oh, Cincinnati will keep it close, but they don't really have a chance to win the game. And then, there's just things that happen throughout the course of a game. Watch, we're all going to be watching tomorrow, and we're just going to shake our head and go, "Oh, look, here it is. Look, there's something about to happen," and there'll be that one fluky moment where there's like a strip sack or something, safety, something, a penalty in the end zone, something crazy that happens that switches momentum and gives Cincinnati a chance to win the game. Whether or not they win it, I'm not making any predictions. I'm not in that game. I'd rather watch the game and just have fun and enjoy it. But.
I'm in the tune that I think Kansas City is going to pull it out. I think it's one thing to beat Kansas City once, but it's another thing to then go in to the playoffs and beat them again in Kansas City on the road. I think it's going to be a tough task, especially after last week, how big of a game Kansas City just had. Or maybe I could be wrong, and because of how much energy they had to put in to get that win against Buffalo, they might come out flat early. So that's why I'm saying you might want to get the bar early when maybe they're flat from last week, coming off a big high like that, and try and get that big lead early so you can take a little bit of pressure off your team and keep it on Kansas City. But I just have a feeling that Kansas City is going to ride it, and they're going to keep the win here, and they're going to go back for a 3rd straight year.
You definitely got to try to put pressure on them early if you're Cincinnati. If you can get up 14-0 or something like that early on, and you kind of like Kansas City's kind of sitting there like, what the hell just happened? We're 8 minutes into this game, and it's 14-0 Cincinnati. Like the hell, you know what I mean? Jesus Christ, we better do something quick before this. You can't spot their offense too many points, sort of thing. You just get them thinking, right? You just put a little bit of pressure on them to get them thinking, like, like maybe we're in a little bit of trouble here. You just got to do something to make Kansas City uncomfortable. You got to get Kansas City to try to play your game instead of playing theirs, which they probably both have similar game plans when it comes to trying to win. They both, everything's built around their offense, but still, you want to then dictate everything, with your offense. You don't want Kansas City's offense dictating the game. If you're Cincinnati, you're like, no, we want to dictate the pace of this. We want to dictate everything and how it's all going to go. That's us that's dictating this game, not you guys, sort of thing. But, you've been there, done that sort of thing, right? And Kansas City's been there, done that. Cincinnati hasn't ever been there and done that. They're kind of just, oh, okay, this is new. Well, let's see how this goes. Kansas City knows what it's like to be in this moment. They've been here 3 straight years now, and, sometimes that's an advantage. Sometimes it's a disadvantage, right? Sometimes what you don't know, we say that about young kids. Something like, hey, sometimes the best thing is, I've got no idea. Joe Burrow, if you ask Joe Burrow, what to expect going into the situation, he's like, I got no idea, never been there before. Well, sometimes that's just as much of a good thing as it is a bad thing, right? Don't know what to expect. Don't really have any expectations. Don't really know what the pressure is going to be like. So, sometimes you go into a situation and you don't realize just how much pressure is supposed to be on you. And, it's just one of those things that makes it easier to deal with, as opposed to Mahomes, who realizes who's got more pressure on him tomorrow, Mahomes or Burrow. Mahomes 100%, right? I mean,
easy.
You're the one that's the favorite that's supposed to go to 3 straight Super Bowls.
No,
you're the one that's got a bitchy fiance and an attention whore younger brother that we all fucking love to talk shit about. So don't give anybody any more firepower than they already have.
Cincinnati wasn't even supposed to be in it. They're exceeding and going past expectations ×2, and they're still in it, which is a shock. But it's kind of played with how it's funny here. It's like we're not supposed to be here. Let's just go out with a bang. We win, we win. We lose, we lose. They're not expecting us.
There ain't no pressure on
here.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
If they lose, people are gonna be like, like hell of a season. Like, if Kansas City loses, people are gonna be like, damn, the fuck? How'd you lose to them at home?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
a choke job, sort of thing.
I mean, going back to if Cincinnati loses, I mean, they exceeded so many expectations. And I think the only way from them is just to keep going up. And they could be, if they have a successful offseason and make sure they get everything right, maybe they could be serious AFC title contenders. Maybe.
I mean, if you're the NFL, you almost want the Chiefs to be there just because it's going to make you more money
ratings.
than
it's
the Bengals.
Superstars. And of course,
could you imagine like the Bengals and the Rams or something? Like, oh my God, like
woof.
Yeah, the league's like, ew, like
yeah.
Now,
I think the more intriguing game, the Niners Rams game. I mean,
yeah.
How about the Niners are beating the Rams 6 straight times? Like, it's almost like Kyle Shanahan's made it a statement since him and Sean McVay came in the league together. Like, listen here, young Padawan, I will make it a mission to take your lunch money every single time that I see you on the playground from this point forward for all eternity. Because I created you, I brought you into this world, and damn it, I can take you out of this world. Like, sort of, like Shanahan is really just like, he is Sean McVay's kryptonite. 6 straight times, and you're almost like they just find a way to beat the Rams in all different ways. If they need to outscore them, they do. If they can they'll beat them defensively if they have to. And you almost feel like there's one of two things here. Like, you got your breaking point. Either the Rams finally they get over that hump and like they overcome that what has been their Achilles heel, or it's like that same old thing, and the Niners find a way to do what they do and just. How has this happened again? Good Lord, the Rams are cursed against the Niners, sort of thing. Like, you're going to really have some crazy conversations and narratives that are attached to this football game, depending on how it goes. So,
and then remember these two guys these two guys were on the same coaching staff with in Washington.
Sure.
It was like they were talking about what was it? They had 3 coaches on there. And
LaFleur, Shanahan, and McVay all in Washington under Mike. Mike Shanahan was there, and Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. LaFleur was like an assistant coach, and McVay was the tight ends coach. And somehow none of them ended up getting hired after Mike Shanahan got fired. They fucking sat there and hired Jay Gruden.
Exactly. But this is another situation just like in the last game where they played each other week 18 in LA. LA was up big. I think it was like 18-3 at half. And then all of a sudden, it just changed. San Fran came back, started winning. They started causing turnovers. They started running the ball, which was the big thing. They started to use Deebo Samuel's in more of like that Swiss Army knife position where you got him catching passes, you got him coming in from the running back spot, running the ball, and it just created havoc. You had Jennings stepping up in the passing game with Ayuk. Ayuk started to show flashes of what he should have been doing last year. Jennings became a very good option these past couple of weeks in the week 18 in the playoffs. Their defenses finally got to a point where they're one of the top defenses. They're making plays, causing turnovers, keeping that offense in it at the end of the game where you might not have the best guy running it at quarterback in Jimmy G, but they're kind of making it do with him even there. Like he's making plays. Like you look at last week, he didn't do anything special, but he didn't turn the ball over. I think he had one, but it's like at the end of the game, he was driving them, getting them to a point where they get a field goal. He does just enough to
stop it. No, Jimmy G does something every single week to try to lose them a football game. Every single week he's going to do something to try to lose them a game. That's what's so amazing about Shanahan. That's what I'm saying about Shanahan. What's so amazing to me is, you've got a quarterback that does everything he can every single week to try to lose you a football game, and you still overcome it more times than not. And a perfect example was last week. I mean, dude, his asshole was puckered so tight, he did not want to give Jimmy Garoppolo a chance to lose them that football game. Bucky, I don't need you to go win me the game. I just don't want you to lose me the game. Like Jimmy Garoppolo, if you realize, like you said, it's Deebo Samuel, it's all that. They're always finding a way to outcoach the other team and grind out a win, but they never are ever going to say, here, Jimmy G, go win us a football game. No, that's the last thing they ever want to do because they realize Jimmy G ain't going to do that. Just don't lose me the game. I don't need you to win it. Just don't lose it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He's doing it not to lose it rather than not to win it. But then on the other side, you got Aaron Rodgers, who can't even trust anybody on his team. And he's doing just as worse as what Jimmy G did. The pressure's on everybody else on the other team half the time. So it's like Jimmy G can do whatever he wants. And it's like, oh, it's the Niners. We don't expect them to go far because it's Jimmy G at quarterback. And then they just find a way to do it anyway.
I mean, if we're not, he's really not good.
He makes a lot of mistakes. I'm not saying he's good. I'm just saying the team itself gets by besides him.
Well, and when the Niners are healthy, they've got one of the best rosters in football, right? I mean, outside of Jimmy G, that defense is phenomenal, right? And I mean, all the skill position players, Deebo Samuel's, like you said, a Swiss Army knife type player, right? They always, typical Shanahan fashion, the Shanahans have always done this. They pull running backs off the streets out of bus stops and shit. Dudes were bagging groceries at like Target yesterday, and next thing you know, they're running for 100 yards, in a Shanahan offense. It's amazing.
Who would have thought that they would have lost Raheem Mostert at the darling of their Super Bowl year, who had that crazy playoff year? He missed the whole season. Just like you said, they bring in Elijah Mitchell from the draft, and he has a great year. He's had a good playoffs. I'm never
worried about the running back position. I wish we could develop running backs like that.
Yeah, you got like a mix of him and what's his name? Him and Deebo in the backfield. I think the crazy thing was the fact that Deebo Samuel had more rushing attempts almost than Aaron Jones did with Green Bay last week.
8 rushing touchdowns. It's the most rushing touchdowns for a receiver in NFL history. And I mean, 8 rushing touchdowns. That's more rushing touchdowns than Miles Sanders has had in like his entire career, isn't it? Like
more. It's more than likely. I wouldn't be surprised. But it's like
somebody. Don't tell Chuck Moran, he might come on and start yelling at people.
But I know this sounds crazy, but like in this game, I'd be a fool to not lean towards San Fran with that defense because I know the Rams are playing really well right now. They just but it's like just like you said before, it just seems like Shanahan and the Niners have had McVay and the Rams every time in these games. Even when they go behind,
it really is like the bully at lunchtime. Yeah. It really is. It's like the bully at the lunch period. Like, listen there, get down and lick that dirt and give me your whatever. Like Shanahan can get like really. He's that type of bully. Like and McVay's like scared. It's like the scene from Waterboy, where Coach Klein is scared of Red Bayou. You know what I mean? It takes it to the point where he's like finally has to like imagine him like a baby and all that for him to finally get over it. But he's like all terrified of Red Bayou, the other head coach. It's like that's McVay with Shanahan. When Sean McVay goes to sleep at night, like it's Kyle Shanahan that pops up in his dreams. That's the guy chasing him with the with the sword or whatever, or the axe or whatever. When you got that psycho in your dreams chasing you in your nightmares, Kyle Shanahan's the one that's chasing Sean McVay in those nightmares. That's what keeps him up at night.
Yeah. But I have a feeling that you're going to get just like before, a lot of running from San Fran. You might see it 30 times because of how like we keep talking about Jimmy G. The best way to control all that is to take the ball out of his hands as much as possible. He'll probably get the same 10 to 15 carries, 10 to 15 pass attempts that he has just to get Deebo Samuel going. You get a fluctuation of Samuel and Mitchell in the backfield, and you keep that offense in LA off the field as much as possible because other than Kansas City and of course Buffalo, they've been one of the hottest offenses in the league the past month of the season, and Matthew Stafford's finally getting that weight taken off of his shoulder for not doing good when it matters. He played great last week, great the week before.
That throw in crunch time at the end of the game. That's when and you almost could tell by Sean McVay's reaction afterwards, running up to go get him. Like that's what we traded. That's why we traded for you. That right there. Because Jared Goff takes that hit in the fucking chops and doesn't even fucking throw that football because he's Jared Goff. Whereas Matthew Stafford reads it pre-snap, knows what he's got to do. I've got to get the ball out. I'm going to take a shot in the process of getting the ball out, but I know where I want to go with it. I got Cooper Kupp one-on-one on a safety. That throw needs to go there every single time, and elite quarterbacks recognize that pre-snap, and they make that throw. Good quarterbacks, some of them make that throw, but some of them don't. That's the type of throw that you watch a guy like that make, and you saw him take a shot, as he made the throw, and that's an elite throw. Like, that's elite quarterback play right there. That's what that is.
And then you could see me even going like this. You could see Stafford go after. He goes, it's kind of like getting off his shoulders. He's like, okay.
They haven't think about it. Like, it's all or nothing for them this year. Even if they lose to the Niners, it's such a disappointing year. You literally gave up everything. You have no draft picks. Like, Von Miller's come in there. You've given up everything to go win a Super Bowl because you realize how, where your window's at. Their window, they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago with Jared Goff and didn't win. So you knew then, hey, like, we're in our window. We've got to go win a Super Bowl now with this current squad because your window doesn't stay open forever, right? And you can almost tell that they kind of feel the urgency to go make it happen. Could you imagine if they did all this and then after everything is said and done, they don't win a Super Bowl of any kind 5 years from now? You're like, yep, that team never won a Super Bowl. No matter how much winning they do, no matter how many playoff runs they make, it's going to be a disappointment. You're going to look back and be like, man, wow, what a disappointment that squad was. Because that's what they've committed now. They've made it clear that Super Bowl or bust.
What a kick in the groin is it to the Browns, seeing how good Odell Beckham's doing. Of course, he's not playing top 10 wide receiver, but he's coming in there. He had one touchdown in the first 10 games or so, something like that with the Browns. And then as soon as he gets moved to the Rams, he's had 5 touchdowns. He's looked like a good wide receiver in place of Robert Woods, a good compliment to Cooper Kupp, making those insane catches at the sideline. Like, he had another one last week where he just gets his feet in bounds and goes out, kind of like keeping his balance and then getting the catch that led to a touchdown. And he's just kind of rejuvenated his career in LA. And a thing that kind of went unnoticed was the fact that they paid him $750,000 bonus that he was supposed to get, even though he didn't hit it. But the Rams gave it to him because Sean McVay said he was a big part of the team, and he felt like he earned it in his standards, so he gave him the bonus anyway.
They've got – when you look at that squad on both sides of the football, it's the most talented squad. It's the most talented team in the NFL. Like, there's really no excuses for them to not go win. Really, realistically, if you're an NFL fan, you want to see the Chiefs and the Rams. Those are the 2 most talented teams left. You know what I mean? Like, you really do. But I don't know. It's just something about tomorrow tells me the Niners. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, man, those Niners, those sneaky Niners are going to find a way to do it again. You know what I mean? Like, it's something about it just tells you, like,
I can read it now. The Niners and Chiefs again, but this time the Chiefs are going to find a way to lose the Super Bowl, and the Niners are going to win it somehow. And Jimmy G's going to laugh at everybody. Imagine if that were to happen.
Oh my God, that would be
the greatest coaching job in the history of the NFL, because you're not winning shit because of Jimmy G. You won it in spite of him.
But what if he goes in? What if he goes into that and has one of the best games of his career? Is what I'm saying.
Nick Foles had a great game in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
doesn't make you like anything special. I guess it gets you a statue.
But no one criticizes Nick Foles. Nick Foles has always been a backup. He comes in here. And he's never really played a full season, been criticized like Jimmy G has. Jimmy G has been criticized.
If Jimmy G played in any other offensive system, the dude would be like benched already. He wouldn't even have a job.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm convinced. When you watch guys like Nick Mullins, who like came in here and like were so terrible, we cut him in training camp, for God's sakes. He was like our 3rd string quarterback. You watched a guy like that, and like, if you go like look at Nick Mullins has like 2 games where he had like over 400 yards passing, and like, was like the only rookie ever in the history of the NFL to do that or something in a Shanahan offense. You're like, when Kyle Shanahan has Nick Mullins like setting passing records and shit, something crazy's going on. There's something in the water over there in that offense. Holy shit. It must be so easy to play quarterback. Good Lord. So I don't, again, I don't really know. Like, is it just Garoppolo's that protected by, by what Kyle Shanahan's system is, and it's that simplified for a quarterback? It's that easy for them to have success that, Jimmy G gets hurt, and it's why they they've won, I guess, like Jimmy G win. Oh, he wins games. Yeah, but are they that much worse when you watch somebody else play quarterback? Like, it always still seems like they're playing a close game. It's not like somebody else comes in to play quarterback when Jimmy G's hurt and they're getting blown out. They're still in close games. They're still trying to grind out wins the same way they are with Jimmy G. I guess they just grind him out a little bit more with him at quarterback. Now, maybe that's a testament to, like, that the intangibles that he has and how much, the teammates love rallying around a guy like that and all that. But, I mean, we talk about arm talent all the time, right? And, like, either you have it or you don't. Like, he's a guy that thinks he's got, like, Brett Favre arm talent, but, like, you're not Brett Favre. You're Jimmy G. Like, stop trying to, like, make throws that you can't make. Like, what the hell was that? Like, every game you watch him make a throw, you're like, what was that? Like, what window was that? Like, what? Like, bro, you were like, what? Who are you? Like, you were never gonna. What do you got? Matthew Stafford's arm strength? Like, Matthew Stafford tries to make that throw because he's got that type of arm, but like, you're Jimmy G. Like, good Lord, know your role.
Now, one point I did want to bring across is of course we're talking about the Niners, and they beat Green Bay last week. I'd be remiss not to mention the fact of Aaron Rodgers. Would you consider Aaron Rodgers overrated in the sense that everybody thinks he's one of the best quarterbacks currently right now, but he only has one ring, which was back in 2010 when they weren't even expected to win it. They were a 6th seed, and of course, Mike McCarthy was the head coach, and you see what he's doing with Dallas right now, finding ways to lose there in the playoffs. Would you consider him right now overrated, or would you just consider him?
I don't know if he's overrated. Yeah, I guess he's this generation's Dan Marino almost, except he's got a ring and Marino didn't. But I mean, Marino, like, when you look at their career, Marino was a guy that bunch of stats, didn't really ever have any playoff success. Rodgers is 11-10. I'm sure Marino's playoff record's pretty similar, right around 500 or whatever, maybe even a little bit worse than that. But I think the biggest comparison for me is I've always heard from, like, there's been some people that played with Dan Marino that said, like, the reason why the Dolphins didn't have more success and didn't do more winning when Dan was there was because it was always more about Dan than it was about the Dolphins. And, like, if you remember, the reason they hired Jimmy Johnson was because it had gotten to a point where they were throwing the ball so much offensively that, like, it was just, like, it was so predictable. We know you're going to throw the ball. This is what defenses are game planning for. And a lot of that has to do with Dan Marino, I guess, that's I don't want to say selfish, but that is what it is. It's and it's backed up by stuff like, and if you've watched Dan Marino's football life, there's a scene where he talks about, there's a couple of ex-teammates, Mark Clayton and guys like that are like, we'd all be sitting around the bus on these bus rides to, different cities and shit like that. And you have these conversations. Oh, what's your ultimate football fantasy? And Dan Marino would say, like, my ultimate football fantasy is to throw the ball every single offensive snap of a game. I'd like to throw the ball every single play of a game. That's like, who has that fantasy unless you're just what I mean? Like, that's kind of selfish, right? And you're like, it doesn't surprise me that a guy like that didn't do more winning. And I think when you look at Rodgers, whether it's intentional or unintentional, same thing. Like, he's always in the spotlight. The attention's always on him for the wrong reasons. You're over here fucking flashing your broken, fractured toe on a Joe Rogan podcast or something, whatever the fuck. Like, there's always something going on with him that is just, like, can't we just talk about what's going on with football with you? Does it always have to be something, not related? You were dating Danica Patrick for a while, and then you were dating, the other bitch that's famous for a while. And then, he had the feud with his family where, like, him and his family weren't talking, and that became really public and really ugly. And just like, does it always have to be about you? I can see why your family doesn't like you. You seem like an all about you sort of person, which I guess when you're great and you're that fucking good, you can be that way. But that type of stuff comes back to haunt you. And when you don't have success or when you underachieve, as you've put it, those are the things that people start to look at and point the finger at and go, hey, maybe this plays a role in it, sort of thing.
Yeah, then they fire Mike McCarthy. They bring in Matt LaFleur. You don't even know if he's going to come back on the team, get traded.
Yeah, they did all these things to bend over backwards to kind of like, and
he was having like
what Rodgers wanted.
And he was having like a career, like a career crisis where he wasn't sure if he was going to keep playing or not. Yeah, Matt LaFleur came in and was like, keep playing. I'm going to instill like a more balanced attack to help you out, to manage things because you haven't been playing as great as what you should be. He brings in like they had Aaron Jones. They start using Aaron Jones a lot more. They use more of a running game to set up Aaron and Rodgers, and that had a big like impact on Aaron Rodgers' career that last couple of years. The fact that Aaron Jones came in, had 22 touchdowns, like 1,400 yards, and just blew up. But then the past couple of years, it's been kind of, we had this year. Let's go back to throwing the ball a lot now because we got Davante Adams. It's like I see games where 1 week they would be running the ball like they should, and then the next week Aaron Jones will only have like 8 carries. And it's like Aaron Jones is the guy that will help you out.
There's definitely a little bit of me syndrome in Aaron Rodgers, right? And part of that when he was on the podcast recently, or one of the he was on the Monday Night Football, the Manning cast or whatever it was when they were doing that broadcast, and he had the Atlas Shrugged. If anybody's ever read Atlas Shrugged, it's the book. It's a book that kind of it puts out there the idea
for libertarians.
Yes, of course. As a libertarian, I'm well aware of it. Right.
To the simplest terms, it's a book.
No, hold on. But it puts out the idea that being selfish is like it's a positive personality trait, right? Like that when you read Atlas Shrugged, like it portrays selfishness as a positive personality trait in some ways, and in some ways it can be. Like you understand what they're saying, but it doesn't surprise me that Aaron Rodgers loves that book. And it's like, like I know you kind of come across to me as that type of guy. Like it doesn't surprise, selfishness and being all about yourself to you is a good thing. To somebody like Aaron Rodgers, you could just kind of see that, like, well, what's wrong? You got to look out for yourself more than anything else. Who else is going to have your back if you don't have your own back, sort of thing. Yeah, I get you. You're a little bit of a me person, Aaron. I get it. It makes sense. I'm not shocked by the fact that you were promoting that book and were trying to troll people on the Manning cast.
It's just crazy to look at last week, and it's like he had 200 yards, like 0 touchdowns, and I think 8 of those catches were to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones had a great game. He tried every bit to try and help them win, and then Davante Adams had almost the rest of the catches. You got a guy like Alan Lazard who has been playing well the past month. He's not a top wide receiver. He's a good complementary piece that you throw 3, 4, 5 times a game, and he might catch 3 passes. I don't even think he had a pass. I don't even think he caught a pass. Like majority of this stuff were to Jones and to Adams, and San Fran knew that. I think they allowed those two to do whatever they wanted, and then they kind of just worried about that. They kind of doubled them. Let them get to the point where they got to their 20 and allowed Green Bay to kick field goals because that's all they were doing. And it's like once they got into that 20 range, you saw Aaron Rodgers make mistakes. He made a couple of mistakes, and it cost them. And then, of course, they got cost on the special teams plays as well. But it's like a guy like that should know that it's like I don't have to throw it every play. I can rely on the running game to help me make better passes. That's why I get paid the big bucks, so that when I do need to throw, that it needs to be completed and I will throw a touchdown. But I just like you said, I think it's like that me mentality. I got to do everything myself. And it's like, that's why you didn't win. You lose to I hate to say this, but that's why you lost to San Fran, who whose quarterback is Jimmy G, who gets credited as he should be with all the mistakes that he's made, but he somehow finds a way to win because the team knows that he's not as good as you, so they do the things around him to win, whereas you kind of do the opposite. You kind of find ways to lose when it matters. Like when you have all these guys that are on your team to help you win. You had that defense that made the plays. You have that the running game. But when Aaron Jones only has 2 more rushing attempts than Deebo Samuel, a wide receiver, that's when you got issues. That's when you know things are going wrong because you're not sticking to the plan. You're trying to get that moment, because then if you win or if you lose, you can kind of stick it to Green Bay. And now I kind of hope that he goes to a different team and loses, because then we can be like, okay, you're on a different team now. You can't blame Green Bay anymore because you got your wish and you went elsewhere and you're still losing. So whose fault is it now?
I don't know. I don't know if he goes anywhere this way. I mean, people keep saying Denver, and I'm like, why would he go to Denver? Like, you're gonna be like the 4th best team in the AFC. Like, think about like going to the AFC almost. Like, I mean, look at all the good young quarterbacks out there between Burrow and Herbert and Mahomes.
You might be the 3rd best team in your division.
Yeah, like, like it just kind of seems nutty like that. I think he stays in Green Bay, but I don't know. Anybody seen Embiid's stat line tonight? Good Lord, he's got like 40 points and like 12 rebounds as the Sixers dominate.
Because I am currently watching the Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
I got that
on the Rumble. So,
dude, who watches WWE still? Like, turn on AEW like an adult.
I'm watching AEW too, but I'm gonna
put on AEW like an adult
for the Royal Rumble reaction.
Yeah,
which you can also check out. Drop in and say hello.
He has 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists.
Yeah, like that's and then he's over here. Does he not like? Embiid right now, I mean, like we talk about, like, one of our topics about, his prime and whether the Sixers are kind of wasting it. Does this not give you like an Allen Iverson type feel where you're just absolutely. Great, Allen's going to ball out every night and be in the MVP conversation every year, but like his 2nd best player is Eric Snow. Like, holy shit. Like, it's like, I mean, like, holy fuck. Like, this is what we got with Embiid. Like, great. Like, guess who his 2nd best player tonight was? Tobias Harris has got like 18 and like 8. Like, okay, good. Like, but when Tobias Harris is your running mate, you ain't winning shit.
Right.
And I've said this to you before. That's where I blame Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons was supposed to be the 2, and it kind of you forced Tobias Harris to get thrusted from the.
You almost trying to force Ben to be the 2, because let's be honest, like what you wanted Ben to do, like, oh well, you have to develop an offensive game, you have to develop it, and he's probably I don't have one, like I can't develop it, like I don't have it, I don't know how to shoot the goddamn ball. I don't know how.
It's not he doesn't know; it's he chooses not to. He rather just drive the lane the whole time because I
don't think he's got the confidence to consistently do it. I mean, anybody knows. Me and you both know how to shoot a jump shot, Daniel. It doesn't mean we have the confidence to knock it down on a consistent basis in an NBA game. And that's the difference. Like, I really don't think the dude has the confidence to go make that jump shot. Well, he's got to, if he's open, he's got to take the 20-foot jumper. Well, it's easy for you to say. That's like saying that, like, you need me to get on a motorcycle and jump across that fucking gap and land on the other side. Like, it's easier said than done when you don't have the confidence to do it. I think that the dude's scared to death to shoot the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that he's what's the word? He's coddled too much. No, he's coddled too much. Look at all his past coaches. They allow him to do the same thing every year. They allow him to get away with not improving his
I've
team.
said that before. He reminds me of the kid, Frank. You've got an Italian mom. Like, Italian moms will beat your ass. I've heard stories about, like,
my mom is German.
I've heard. Well, whatever. Same difference. Your dad's Italian. I'm sorry. You grew up in an Italian household. I heard stories about your mom sticking like soap in your mouth and shit like that for cursing. Stop lying. Or maybe that was your brother or something. I don't know.
That was my brother.
That was your brother. Okay, well, whatever. I'm just saying, like, Ben Simmons seems like the type of kid that never got his ass beat growing up, never got disciplined for nothing. You know what I mean? Like, got away with everything because he was special and entitled, and look how good you are at basketball. He didn't get his ass beat like us legitimate fucking people.
But he's definitely doing a lot of the workload though right now. That's why it's like I want them to bring somebody in to kind of help out. They had guys injured, and so it added to the mix was like, of course, Curry was out 5 games. Milton was out 2 games.
And Seth Curry's like a 6th man on most teams. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the type of shit. Like Seth Curry was never. Like there's a reason he was like the 8th man on every other team he's ever been on before he came here, because the guy really isn't like that good. But like he's just in a position where like who else do we have?
He shoots great.
Like, and who else do we have to shoot the 3 here? Like nobody. Yeah. Like most teams have 2 or 3 3-point shooters. He's the only one we have. You know?
I mean, you have Curry, and then Niang, who comes off the bench, he shoots consistently.
Yeah, but I mean, even you're just like, okay, like when he comes in, you're kind of like, oh, this guy, like,
I like that Curry.
Like, but I don't know. I think it's.
But how do you feel about the whole thing with the Kings saying that they're out of it? Do you think the Sixers?
Yeah, because they realize that, like, you're not going to get any better offer than what we've already given you. Right. Like, what are y'all talking about? Y'all want Tyrese Halliburton? Y'all want like De'Aaron Fox? Y'all want Buddy Hield? Y'all want like everybody that we have, any player of value, you want them all. Like, we're way overvaluing Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, like, he's not even playing right now. Like,
but it's not just Ben Simmons that they wanted. They wanted Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, and Matisse Thybulle on top of that.
Well, yeah, the Thybulle thing was the only thing about the deal that I didn't like. But still, you've got to understand, when you're packaging Simmons and Harris in a deal, that's a lot of money for a team to take on for one guy that's not even playing right now and another guy that, it isn't worth that money and that you're overpaying. And it's not that Harris is a bad player. You just know you're overpaying for what he's giving you. He's not a max contract guy, yet you have to give him a max contract. So, I mean, like, the value there, like, the only thing that's really getting back in return, like, Sacramento gets rid of Harrison Barnes' contract, with helps. But like, outside of that, they're still taking on 2 max deals. And neither guy that they're getting back is a max contract player, yet they're taking on 2 max contract deals. So, I mean, again, like, you can't be a beggar and a chooser. And right now, that's almost what we're doing. By telling Sacramento, we need De'Aaron Fox.
But the Kings what
value are they getting to give you De'Aaron Fox?
The Kings are the ones that wanted both Simmons and Tobias. The Sixers didn't want to get rid of both of them if they weren't going to get enough back. They're kind of just adding.
Yeah, because of what you're asking back in return.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
you want Halliburton? You want Halliburton, Hield, Harrison Barnes, and 2 first-round picks for Ben Simmons? And what, Matisse Thybulle? Yeah, you better fucking like include Tobias Harris or something. That, you know what I mean? Like that.
I don't think it was that. I don't think that was the trade to begin with. I think the trade that we were shown was what it developed into. I don't think it was just that. I think it was a situation where we were like, okay, Ben Simmons, and we're looking at. We want at least Fox or Halliburton back. Like, I'm not saying all the other pieces were there or not. I'm just saying that's what we wanted. And then it came to the area to where the Kings were like, okay, we'll give you Halliburton, but and for Simmons, but you throw in Harris, and then you got to give us Thybulle because we want like a young piece back, and we'll give you Barnes and Hield because they're shooters. You need shooters, but they got big contracts, and it kind of, even though we're taking on Harris, we're giving you that back because those are big contracts as well. Yeah, but then I
guess, but like we're still acting as if Ben Simmons is the all-star player that he was 2 years. I mean, I think at this point around the league, like Ben Simmons has 0 value. Like, it's not even that his value's dropped. Like, to them, he has 0 value. They don't even know if he's going to play when you trade for him. This is a guy that's been claiming that he has mental issues and needs Sixers doctors to check him out mentally and shit, and needs a therapist. What do you think, teams are going to trade for a guy and just assume that he's going to get on the court and be playing at a high level? They're like, this guy's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks to get in shape and all that.
It happened a couple of years ago with the Spurs and
with Kawhi. That's right.
Yeah, with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard played the first 8 games. He demanded to be traded, and then he sat. He did the same exact thing Ben Simmons did. He sat for
except they can give you 30 a game.
Yeah, once he got traded, he didn't do that. Everybody is in the assumption that he was doing that with with the Spurs. He wasn't playing like that with the Spurs. He waited until he got traded to the Raptors, and then he stepped his game up. He
still had a Finals MVP award with San Antonio. I mean, he at least had something that like.
Well, Andre Iguodala did the same thing with the Warriors.
Okay, great. I mean, but as I'm saying, but at least you've got something to say. Hey, I've got value. I won a Finals MVP award. Ben Simmons is like, I fucked a Kardashian. Well, good for you. That's like the most respectable thing on your resume.
Yeah, but he won like a Finals MVP with like Tim Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker on the same team, and he just happened at the time of being the fourth guy where there's no pressure. That changed when he went to the Raptors, of course, but he sat out that whole year, got traded, and then he took the Raptors to the Finals. Not saying that Ben Simmons would be the same, but it was the same scenario. He sat the whole year, got traded for DeMar DeRozan and a draft pick for him. So they got a top 50 player back of value. And we see what DeMar DeRozan is finally doing now on the Bulls. He's having a MVP type year, like 5 years later. A little too late for the Spurs, you would say, because he didn't play that for the Spurs. But it's like, all this happens. This has become a norm where you sit out and then you wind up getting traded for what you want, and that's what happens. And the Sixers are like, okay, we want something back. We're not going to just give him up for a no-name piece and call it a day. We'll be content finding him and send him if we don't get anything, because he doesn't want to show up and play for us. If he they were ready to let him come back and play. But then he said no. So then we drew the line in the sand. We're like, okay, you're not going to show up. You're not going to practice. You're not going to play. We're going to tell you to just stay home and fine you. We're not taking anything less, even if it kind of hurts us. We're not going to take anything less, because what's the point of training him for like a pennies to the dollar if it's not going to help you?
I'll trade him for some good marijuana at this point, Daniel.
I don't know. Why don't you just drop him then? Why don't you just release him? If you're going to just do that.
I mean, that's your next step. If you can't find a trade partner, that's going to be what you have to do, because you ain't going to pay the dude to do nothing.
Yeah. Well,
and if you are, you might as well just not have him in the building or on the roster at all. Fuck you. We'll just fucking.
I think they're content. I think they're content with just waiting into the offseason. They're going to wind up getting an offer decent enough just to cover them, to where they can be like, okay, I got this guy. Maybe he was an all-star. Maybe he was this close to being one. But there will be teams that will want to trade with them. I could see them revisiting the Indiana Pacers, because they're looking to trade Sabonis and Myers Turner. They're looking to blow that shit up.
Oh my God, Miles Turner, good Lord.
Yeah, they're looking to make moves there, because that team's just blown up.
Might as well have Myers Leonard.
Yeah, they're blown up and whatnot. It's like, I think it's fine, but it's like, who do you bring in to help Embiid with this team? Do you just let him carry the workload like he is, and then you got different guys step up each game, or do you do what you did before and kind of bring in like a mid-level guy that can kind of shoot? But then again, he's not going to be the number two. It's like, you got a number one. I feel like you got a number one. You got a number three, number four, number five. You just don't have that number two. That's the problem. And it's going to be like that, I think, until you trade Ben Simmons.
Well, something needs to happen, because they are wasting Embiid's prime, 100%.
Well, he kind of wasted some of his prime too, being injured, because he wanted to eat cheeseburgers every day for the first couple years of his career. So it's like,
Daniel, who doesn't want to eat cheeseburgers every day? I mean, let's be honest.
But we're also not getting paid $30 million a year to play basketball, so it's a little different.
Yeah, I don't know. Tom Brady retiring. The Vikings are talking with Jim Harbaugh about their head coaching vacancy. A lot going on in the NFL at the moment. All that for another day. Frank, you've got to produce in this very ring tonight, don't you?
Yes, I am jumping over to In This Very Ring, which they are live right now, so you can jump over to the other well, if you are watching right now, you can jump over, give Ritz and Butters a nice hello. I will be joining when the men's rumble will be hopping on. So that is going to be fun. They just wrapped up the women's title match where Becky Lynch defeated, I'm not going to say Dewdrop, but her name is Piper Niven to me. Damn it. Becky Lynch just retained the title. Ronda Rousey won the women's rumble, and Roman Reigns retains his title. So we don't know what's coming up next.
I think it's the tag. I think it's the mixed tag, and then they get the world title, and then the men's rumble.
So I don't know what's coming up next on the card, but we are going to react to that. So you can jump right over there.
Next on the A2D card is in this very ring. So make sure you join Frank and the boys as they talk the Royal Rumble. I'm going to go hang out with the wifey for the rest of the night. Daniel.
I'm likely going to continue watching the Rumble as you see me here looking back like 100 times. I'll probably hop in in this very ring and hit the comment section and give my opinions on it so far. So if you're one of the people that like to watch the Rumble, head on over, check those guys out of what they have to think about the pay-per-view so far, and give us your input in the comment section.
Good stuff. Okay.
Good stuff. We are brought to you by eXp Realty. He's our friend. Both went to school with him. Alan Foy. If you are looking to buy or sell a home, looking for a change in career or brokerage, you can contact Alan Foy of eXp Realty LLC over at 302-682-8820, or you can visit him over at alan.foy at exprealty.com. So with that, good night, everybody.
Oh, that'll keep people up tonight. Frank blowing kisses to everybody. Good Lord.